The story begins over Antarctica, with Invincible carrying a man with a bomb strapped to his body, claiming the man ruined his afternoon. He throws the man with everything he had, clearing enough distance between him and the powerful explosion. The blast was so powerful, it sent him flying into the snow below, but he recovers unharmed and gets up, claiming that if he keeps this up, he is going to give himself a heart attack. The story now jumps to 4 months ago, and Mark is now home in the bathroom, reading a comic book. His mother bothers him, saying that he needs to stop reading and hurry up, or he'll miss school. He finally finishes and goes downstairs, telling his mother that he even has 10 minutes to spare. He asks her if she knows where Dad is, but she hasn't got a clue. He didn't come home last night, but when they turn on the TV, they see him in Taiwan fighting a dragon monster. When the class is ended, Mark's friend William asks him if he wants to hang out tonight at one of their friends' houses, but Mark says he can't because he works at Burger Mart after school. Mark goes out to throw the garbage, but he puts a little too much force into it and sends the garbage flying into the air. He was pleasantly surprised to see that his powers had finally started to develop. It was about time. Later at home, his mother prepared dinner and said they should start because Nolan wasn't coming, but she was wrong because her husband flew right in and sat on the chair. Debbie asks Nolan if he took care of that dragon in Taiwan, and he said it was easy once he found out who was actually controlling the thing. Mark tells his parents that he finally got superpowers, but both of them seemed unimpressed. After dinner, he sneaks outside and flies for the first time, remarking that even if he falls, he should be unharmed, because he is invulnerable. The next day, he decided to test his new powers and picks the perfect moment. While 3 robbers were running away from the police, he ambushes them and knocks them out effortlessly, while one of them asks if he is trying to stop them or rob them. Even though he did a good job, his suit made him look like a robber himself, but nevertheless, his father, who watched the whole thing, was impressed. He asks his son to follow him, and both of them fly away, heading towards a tailor shop. Inside, they meet an old man who creates suits for superheroes, and he gives one to Mark to try out. Mark isn't impressed, saying he doesn't like the yellow color and feels that he needs something more personal. The old man says he can try to build something more tailored to him, but he needs more suggestions and ideas. Sadly, Mark doesn't even have a name for himself. The next day in school, Mark thinks about a hero name for himself and can't focus on the class at all. When the class ended, the professor asked Derek to stay behind and talk for a minute. While putting his books inside the locker, a bully was picking on one of the kids, but Mark intervened and asked him to stop. The bully was annoyed that Mark had the courage to say something and pushed him, but Mark didn't back down and slammed him against the locker rooms. This got him into trouble, and he was sent to the principal's office. The principal knew the guy was a bully and told Mark he should have called a teacher instead of attacking the guy. The guy is twice his size. He isn't invincible after all. A group of thieves attacked the local savings and loan bank and stole a lot of money. They quickly ran outside and headed to the other side of the street where they had the car parked. But Mark was waiting for them, dressed in his suit and levitating their car in the air. He tells the robbers they shouldn't bother shooting him because he is invincible. The next part of the story begins with Omni-Man telling his young son the truth about his origins and why he is different from the rest of the people. Nolan was born billions of miles away from Earth on a blue planet called Viltrum. Their race of people are called Viltrumites and are very similar to humans, but they can fly, move at super speed, and possess great strength. Their planet achieved the perfect global society. There was no illness, no murder, and no war. Their council took it upon themselves to look after less developed planets and help them develop to their level of advancement. They create the World Betterment Committee that had the job of overseeing other planets and helping them develop faster. Omni-Man worked for this committee, traveling from planet to planet, searching for the ideal world to add to the development program. Earth was rejected because the world seemed too primitive, but Omni-Man liked our planet and how diverse its people were, and decided to stay behind. He wanted to protect Earth until it reached a level of advancement worthy of joining the Viltrumite program, but soon after, he met Debbie and fell in love with her. Nolan continues to tell his young son that one day he will develop superpowers just like him and asks him if he understands. But Mark was only curious if one day he was going to fly. Next, we see Mark in his bed, unable to sleep, and thinking about his newfound powers. He notes that he can fly now and decides to test his powers more. He flies from his window high into the air, enjoying every moment when he sees someone moving on the ground. One of the Mahler twins had just robbed a toy store and was carrying a large game box on his shoulders. Mark wants to stop him, but he was caught off guard and sent flying into the wall. He wanted to retaliate, but a big explosion stopped him. The teen team arrives, and Rexplode tells them to stop fighting, or the next explosion is going to be even bigger. Mauler immediately attacks them and destroys their flying bike, but Mark was able to catch him off guard and knock him out with a strong punch. Robot compliments Mark and says he did a good job, while Adam Eve says he looks familiar. Robot introduces everyone saying it was nice meeting him, but they have to leave after picking up the Mauler twin. The next day, Mark sees Adam Eve in school, and she realized why he looked so familiar. They were both in the same physics class, but they never spoke or noticed each other. Eve tells Mark that the teen team is following the case from last night, and he is welcome to tag along if he wants. He says yes, and they change behind a dumpster, while Eve remarks that it's easier to just fly away, because people don't look up very often. Robot was busy all night and says he wiped Mauler's memory and set him free, just to see where he was going to go next. The three of them jump on a flying bike and follow Mauler to an abandoned warehouse. Inside, his twin asks where was he all night and what happened to the game box. He needs those processors to power an army of robots. Teen Team heard enough and spring into action, attacking the Mauler twins before they could activate the army of robots. They incapacitated the twins in just a few seconds, and Invincible asks if it's always this easy dealing with villains. Meanwhile, in Twin Pines Mall, a teenager wakes up on one of the benches and is shocked to see a bomb strapped to his body. The bomb explodes, killing the young man and destroying a big section of the mall. The next day, the high school principal gives a big speech, saying that 3 students are missing and advises everyone to be cautious, saying they shouldn't go anywhere alone and report anything suspicious to the authorities. Mark tells Eve that the 3 missing students probably deserve it because they are bullies and jerks, but Eve says they were always nice to her. Mark calls her clueless, saying that they were nice to her because she is an extremely attractive girl. She appreciates the compliment, but tells Mark she is dating Rex Splode, but he wasn't implying anything and thinks they should just forget this conversation. Eve asks Mark to come hang out at their lair, but he can't because he is working at Burger Mart tonight. Later, he regrets not going, and his boss screams at him for frying burgers too slowly. He calls his boss a jerk and quits, but instantly regrets it, saying his dad is going to kill him. After having dinner with his family, him and his dad wash the dishes, and Dad suggested he should quit his job. It's not like they need money anyway. Mark can't help but agree, thinking that things worked out in his favor. The next day, his father asks him if he wants to team up and patrol the city together. Nolan compliments his son, saying that his powers are growing stronger every day, and tells him to keep up the good work. They stop for a quick lunch, but his dad left quickly to deal with a threat, and when he returned, he asked Mark for help. A big portal opened, and a race of aliens invaded the city. They deal with the aliens one by one, and even though they weren't that strong, there were too many of them. However, the aliens were aging at a rapid pace, growing older with each passing second, and the father and son duo were able to push back the invasion, sending the aliens back through the portal and into their own dimension. Mark asks his dad if this happens often, to which his father replied that it's usually never this unpleasant. A few seconds longer, and he would have had to call for help from the Guardians of the Globe, or Megaforce. Omni-Man hears something in Lakeside Mall and flies there immediately, while Mark could barely keep up. They find another teenager with a bomb strapped to his body, but Omni-Man threw him outside moments before it exploded. Invincible recognized the kid, saying it was one of the missing students from his school, but out of nowhere, a portal opened, and Omni-Man was kidnapped before he could even react. Mark returns home and tells his mother what happened, but she wasn't too worried, saying that means more pork chops for the two of them. Invincible flies over to the Teen Team lair, hoping to talk to Eve, and tell her about the student that was just killed. He tells Robot that someone is kidnapping kids from his school and turning them into walking bombs. He informs Eve and Rex also, but Robot tells them to go home and sleep, then keep their eyes open at school if they see something unusual. Mark returns home and finds his mom still awake. This time, she looked visibly worried about her husband, remembering one time when Nolan went missing for 7 months, being trapped in another dimension. The next day, Mark and Eve keep talking about the case, and Mark wishes it was just some big monster he could punch. That's the only thing he's good at. During the physics class, the two of them begin talking again, and the professor calls them boyfriend and girlfriend, causing everyone to start laughing at them. Mark thinks the professor was a jerk and made the situation awkward between him and Eve. Robot calls Eve, saying he found out something, but him and the team are rather busy right now. He says their physics professor used to work for a military research firm some time ago, and he is the one behind the attacks. Mark and Eve change into their suits and fly to confront the professor inside his home, before the authorities can arrive. Professor Miles immediately confesses, saying he kidnapped the school bullies because he wanted some revenge after his life was destroyed. His son committed suicide because he was bullied in school, which led to his divorce, and even him getting fired from his job. He wanted to end the pain and sorrow caused by these popular kids, and wants to end his life with a big bang, also killing 2 superheroes. The timer on the bomb attached to his chest was set for 1 minute, which gave Invincible enough time to pick him up and fly him away. He took him all the way to Antarctica, hoping to be far away from people when the bomb eventually exploded. Mark returns home and asks his mom if Dad was back, but he wasn't. While he went upstairs, Omni-Man actually returns home and tells Debbie he needs to shave. She is overwhelmed with relief. During dinner, Debbie asks if something interesting happened to either of them today, and Nolan said he spent the last 8 months enslaved by an army from an alternate dimension. Time passed a lot slower in that dimension, and he was able to form a rebellion and find his way home. Chapter 2 begins at home with Mark doing his homework, but he is interrupted by the sound of his phone ringing. His dad called him to ask for his help, saying that a major baddie was coming into their solar system heading straight for Earth and wants Mark to confront him. Mark says he can't breathe in space, but his dad reassures him that if he can hold his breath for 2 weeks, he can do it for a few hours, without any issues. Invincible puts on his costume, climbs out the window, and takes a deep breath, and then flies directly into space. He waits, but there was nobody there. Suddenly, someone hits him from behind, saying that he came early. The alien was surprised to see someone else other than Omni-Man, while Invincible retaliated trying to slam him into something. But there was nothing there but empty space. The two of them talk telepathically, and Invincible was curious to know how this was even possible. He lands some powerful punches, and the alien is impressed. While Invincible asks if he thinks this is a game, the alien punched Mark so hard that it left him breathless, and he was forced to go back to Earth and take another breath of air. He swiftly returned and slammed into the alien, sending both of them crashing into the moon. Mark is confused and asks the alien if they could talk instead of fighting. He has so many questions. The alien agrees, but is surprised that Mark's predecessor didn't prepare him for the fight. The alien's name is Alan, and he works for the Coalition of Planets. His job is to travel the universe, from planet to planet, and evaluate their champions, to see if they are worthy of protecting that planet. Alan tells Mark that Urath was scheduled for inspection today, and shows him the proof, but Mark says his planet is named Earth and not Urath. Alan realizes he made a mistake. He had been coming to Earth for many years, completely neglecting the planet he was actually supposed to inspect, fearing this might get him fired. He thanks Invincible for helping him to realize his mistake, and then flies away. Mark returns home and has dinner with his parents, telling his father everything that happened. His dad was impressed and wished his son was around the first time he fought the alien. Mark returns to his room tired and wants to rest, but he remembers he still has homework to finish. Invincible plays baseball with his father, while his dad tells him about the time he was kidnapped and taken to another dimension. He was trapped there for far longer than he initially told his mother, even though on Earth it only passed 1 week, and tries to understand how time works over there. Mark remembers his friend William is supposed to come over at 1 p.m. The two of them are headed to Upstate University because they are thinking of applying there. With Mark out of the house, Nolan thinks it's a good idea for him and Debbie to go upstairs and have some fun, and she agrees. Meanwhile, the teen team is having a meeting where Robot informs his teammates that he was offered to join the Guardians of the Globe, and he accepted. Samson, one of the previous members, was recently kicked because the suit that gave him powers was destroyed, and the Guardians recruited Robot. Mark and William arrive at the university and are impressed with how many beautiful girls attend this university. They meet with the orientation officer, who shows them around the campus, and later they meet with her assistant David. William is immediately annoyed with David and the fact that everyone wants to call him by his short name instead of his full name. Meanwhile, back at home, Nolan and Debbie are enjoying their alone time, while Nolan asks his wife if she's ready for round 2. Mark and William meet another guy named Rick, who shows them around the dorm buildings, but not before asking William if he can call him Bill. After a long day of walking around, the two guys take a break and sit on a bench, when out of nowhere, a robot jumps out from inside the building and knocks them down. Mark protected his friend, and then equipped his invincible suit to deal with the robot. He saved as many people as he could, but the robot didn't even acknowledge him. Instead, it jumped directly into a metal rod, which caused its body to explode. Mark dressed back into his normal clothes and went to check on his friend, who realized that he was invincible, and asked why he never told him that he had superpowers. The two of them return home, and William says his secret is safe with him. Mark sees his parents and tells them he's not prepared to deal with them tonight, while Debbie noticed that Nolan wore the t-shirt backward by mistake. Nolan receives an important phone call from the tailor, who tells them that someone broke inside his shop and stole something important. He was working on Samson's power suit in order for him to regain his powers and join the Guardians of the Globe again. Over in Midnight City, two thugs were using a machine trying to enter a building and rob the place. It was almost morning, but there was no daylight in midnight anymore. The city was in constant darkness after the Midnight Magician succeeded in his suicide mission 3 years ago. The two thugs thought the city was mostly abandoned, but they were wrong. Darkwing was out and patrolling the streets. He quickly deals with the two criminals, using his gadgets to incapacitate them, but before he could finish the job, he got an alert from the Guardians of the Globe, asking him to return to base immediately. He wasn't the only one being asked to return to base. Red Rush was out on a date when he got the exact same message. In Boston, War Woman wakes up after sleeping completely naked and goes into the kitchen where her girlfriend was preparing breakfast. A giant figure breaks inside the home and asks her to return home, saying that her place is not among these mortal humans. She refuses to listen and attacks the giant figure, destroying him completely using her mace. She then gets the exact same message on her phone and is forced to return to base. Aquarius was resting on the throne of Atlantis when he got the message, and Martian Man and Green Ghost were out on a mission when they got the message to return to base immediately. The last member, and the strongest one, Immortal, was also on a mission. He swiftly deals with a villain, and then returns to base to see what was the emergency. But nobody knew what was going on, and who summoned the meeting. Out of nowhere, someone attacks them, slicing their heads right off, killing them one by one. Immortal asked the attacker to show himself, and called him a coward, but when he turned around, he was shocked to see who was behind the attack. But before he could do anything, the attacker sliced his head right off. Immortal never liked Omni-Man, and the feeling was mutual. The next day, Detective Damien Darkblood informs Omni-Man about the attack, and asks him if he knows anyone powerful enough to kill the Guardians all at once. He suspects that Samson might be behind the attack, especially since someone stole his suit from the tailor just 1 day prior. Meanwhile, Invincible returns home and finds Adam Eve inside his room crying her eyes out. He asks her what happened, and she says she caught her boyfriend Rex cheating with multiple Kates. Mark's mother enters the room and was shocked to find Eve in her son's bed. She asks both of them to come downstairs. She is upset with Mark bringing girls into his room, but before her son could explain what was going on, Nolan comes inside and tells Mark the Guardians of the Globe were killed, and they need to attend the funeral tomorrow. The next day, Omni-Man was getting ready to attend the funeral, and Debbie asks him if he thought about what they're going to do for Mark's birthday next week, but he completely forgot about it. All the heroes gathered at the funeral, while some of them suspect Samson. Detective Damien ruled him out, saying he was home all week and he didn't even know the Guardians died. He believed his reaction was genuine. Omni-Man gives a big speech saying that he admired the Guardians very much. They were his mentors the first time he came to Earth, but he stops midway when he sees the Mauler twins in the back. The twins say they didn't come here to cause any trouble and only want to pay their respects. Out of nowhere, the funeral was interrupted by one of Samson's friends, who wanted revenge on the Guardians for kicking out Samson when he needed them the most. Sanford had a powerful armor suit, but he was no match for Omni-Man, who incapacitates him with one hit. At night, William visits Mark and asks if they could talk. He was curious about his powers and asks Mark if he can give him a flight test, remarking that what they are doing is very gay. Later in the night at the cemetery where the Guardians were buried, two guys have a brilliant idea of digging up Immortal's grave, saying that if they drink from his skull, they will live forever. After digging the hole, the Mauler twins arrive and thank the two guys for saving them a lot of time by doing most of the work for them. Chapter 3 begins deep in space, after a spaceship that resembles the Star Trek Enterprise was gravely damaged from battle and was about to crash inside the sun. Luckily, Alan the alien was passing by and helps the crew, remarking that he is in great hurry and needs to get to Earth. Now that the Guardians of the Globe are dead, Cecil Stedman asks Robot to take over the team and recruit new heroes and keep working for the government. Meanwhile, Omni-Man is thinking of a way to tell his son the truth, the real reason why he killed the Guardians, and his mission on Earth. Invincible and Adam Eve are on a mission, trying to prevent the Lizard League from poisoning the city's water supply. Mark was taken off guard and knocked out by one of the villains, but Eve handled the situation and trapped all of them single-handedly. After the villains were arrested, Robot shows up and tells them that he is having tryouts for the new Guardians of the Globe, but Mark says he doesn't want to join because he is busy with school, and Eve refused as well. Mark, however, wanted to see the tryouts and is impressed with how many people are willing to join. Rex Splode is amused to see a little girl in the crowd of people and asks her if she is lost. Maybe her mother dropped her off accidentally. The little girl says there is no age requirement to join, and that her alias is Monster Girl, and then transforms into a monster and attacks Rex. The monster was incredibly powerful and gives Rex one hell of a beating. Everyone just stood and watched until Invincible intervened, punching Monster Girl and causing her to revert back to her human form. Robot finishes the tryouts and prepares to announce the names of the new Guardians of the Globe: Duplicate, Shrinking Ray, Monster Girl, Black Samson, and Rexplode. Robot says the door is always open if Invincible decides to join them, but at the moment he is just too busy with school. Later at night, Mark invites one of his classmates to study in his room, but when Eve wanted to come and talk, she saw them kissing and left upset. Meanwhile, the Mauler twins were trying to resurrect the Immortal. After they dug him out from his grave, thinking they could control him, they were successful, but the moment he woke up, he shouted in rage and flew away, looking to take his revenge on Omni-Man for killing him and the Guardians of the Globe. Next, we see Invincible fighting off against a villain who calls himself Doc Seismic. He used special wrists around his hands that could generate incredible shockwaves, powerful enough to create earthquakes. During the confrontation, he falls from one of the cliffs, and Invincible tries to save him, but Doc Seismic refused to be beaten by a kid and accepted to die instead. With the Guardians of the Globe dead, Omni-Man has been picking up their slack and dealing with threats non-stop all over the world, but during one of his missions, he was surprised by the Immortal who attacked him, demanding to know why Omni-Man killed him. The two of them begin a brutal fight, with Omni-Man telling him he should have stayed dead. Their fight was being broadcasted on every TV station, and Mark rushed to help his father immediately. He arrives just in time to hear his father say that he killed the Immortal once, and he will do it again. Mark finally realized the truth, that his father killed the Guardians of the Globe and watched him cut the Immortal in half, slicing his body in two. Immediately after, Omni-Man tells his son they need to talk, and he tells him the real reason why he came to Earth. His home planet Viltrum achieved a perfect global society, but it didn't happen overnight, and not by peace. They slaughtered the weakest Viltrumites from their planet and decided to build and expand the Empire. They selectively chose specific planets that were developed just enough to be useful for them and not to advance to the point where they could resist occupation. All the planets that surrendered were added to their empire, and everyone else who refused were slaughtered and wiped from existence. When Nolan was born, the Viltrumite Empire had already expanded greatly, to the point where they were lacking manpower to continue the invasion of more planets, so a new system was created. Their strongest and most loyal warriors were sent to different planets, where they were supposed to spend the next 500 years weakening their defense and preparing the planet for invasion and assimilation into the Empire. Nolan was sent to Earth, and he initially hated the planet. There was a constant wave of threats that threatened to conquer the planet before Viltrum even had a chance to invade. But everything changed when he met Debbie, and he fell in love. He soon began living like a normal human, and eventually, he was asked to join the Guardians of the Globe. They welcomed him with open hearts, and he even saw many of them as his friends. But he knew that it was his job to weaken the planet's defense in preparation for the invasion, so he had to kill all of them. He tells Mark that Viltrumites are very different from humans, because they will age very slowly the older they get. Eventually, everyone on Earth will be dead, and they will still be alive. Humans mean nothing to them, and his wife is nothing more than a pet to him, even though he loves her. He wants Mark to join him and accept his true origins, to help him prepare the planet for assimilation by the Viltrum Empire. Mark rejects his father's offer and says that Earth is his home, and he won't allow him to destroy it. His father grew tired of his son and punched him, sending him crashing through several buildings and killing hundreds of people. Nolan asks his son if he sees the truth, how fragile humans are, that just one punch is enough to kill thousands of them. In the grand scheme of things, humans mean nothing. In a few hundred years, most civilizations will disappear. Mark continues to fight his dad going inside the subway, destroying everything around them and killing even more people. Nolan says that his loyalties are with the Viltrum Empire, and he would rather see this planet burn and all life eradicated, rather than spending another minute as one of their own. This infuriates Mark, and he attacks his dad, but he retaliates, dismissing his attacks as if they meant nothing. Nolan calls his son a fool for opposing him, and is disappointed in him. He thought he would understand and join him in his quest. He continues to beat his son senseless, and even says that if he refuses to join him, he will kill him, remarking that he can always produce more offspring. Nolan was furious at his son, but he couldn't kill him. He eventually stops and flies away into space with tears in his eyes. The government finds his broken body in the freezing mountains, barely alive, and takes him back to the infirmary. 2 weeks later, Mark recovers and a man named Cecil Stedman visits him. Cecil says he works for the government, and he was collaborating with his dad for years now. He was the one sending him into dangerous missions to deal with threats all over the world. He wants Mark to join the Guardians of the Globe and work for him, saying that he will reward his family and take care of their finances. He shows him a secret laboratory where they were performing experiments and even trying to resurrect the immortal once again. Cecil told Debbie the truth about her husband, and she and Mark return home after many weeks spent recovering. In his first night home, Mark gets a message from Cecil, telling him to fly directly into space and talk to the alien he met before. Alan returned and tells Invincible he had no idea that Earth was marked by the Viltrum Empire. He was shocked to find out that Omni-Man was his father, and that he abandoned Earth. It's not a common thing for Viltrum agents to do so. Alan works for the Coalition of Planets, a group of races that want to stop the Viltrum Empire from expanding, and tells Invincible he needs to go back and report everything he knows. Meanwhile, Mark says he will finish high school. Chapter 4 begins in Saudi Arabia with the Guardians of the Globe fighting against another invasion from the Flaxan Empire. After they captured Omni-Man and took him back to their own dimension, he rebelled against them and was able to destroy most of their homeworld, taking them many centuries to repair. Time passes much faster in their dimension. A few months on Earth is like a few hundred years on their homeworld. The Flaxan Empire returned to Earth more prepared this time, and in greater numbers. A special device attached to their wrists allows them to counteract the side effects of being on Earth and slow down their aging greatly, but Robot was able to spot this and started destroying the wrists. This caused every Flaxan soldier to age very rapidly, and they retreated back into their own dimension. Invincible returns home and finds the Immortal waiting for him. The Immortal tells him that he doesn't trust him because of what his father did, and even though he rebelled against his father's wishes, he will be keeping an eye on him going forward. Inside his room, Cecil was waiting for Mark and tells him that the conversation he and his father had before he left Earth was recorded and leaked on every TV station. Everything he said about the Viltrum Empire and the invasion was leaked to the public, and even though his mother already heard it before, it felt just as devastating as the first time. Donald informs Robot that his new team of superheroes isn't doing too well. The previous heroes were much stronger and faster. He informs the Guardians that a new hero named Bulletproof was added to the team, and the Immortal has also joined as an advisor and equal to Robot. A few days pass by, and Cecil asks Invincible to come to the Pentagon immediately. After Omni-Man killed Acarus, the Atlantean people were left without a king, and according to their traditions, the one who killed him should marry the queen. Since Omni-Man left Earth, this responsibility falls onto his son. The Atlanteans take him back to their city, while Cecil promises to talk to the legal team to find a way out. Invincible meets the Queen of Atlantis, and is informed by Lethan, her trusted servant, that he needs to get ready for the wedding ceremony, because they will get married today. Mark immediately calls Cecil, and tells him that the wedding is taking place today, and he needs to find a way out immediately. Mark realizes that Lethan was deeply in love with the Queen and makes a deal. According to their traditions, in order to marry the Queen, you must first prove your bravery by defeating a giant beast, and then perform the act of love with the Queen in front of everyone living in Atlantis. Mark helps Lethan to defeat the giant monster and prove himself worthy of marrying the Queen. He then leaves Atlantis, while Lethan makes love with her inside a giant arena in front of everyone in Atlantis. The story continues in another dimension, where Invincible and his father have taken over the world completely and were preparing for the Viltrum invasion. We see a man called Livy Angstrom running away to meet with Robot and the Immortal. They were part of the resistance and were praying that nobody saw Livy when he came here. Sadly for them, he was spotted by Invincible, and him and his father break inside and kill the Immortal and Robot. But just before killing Angstrom, another version of him from the main Earth dimension comes out of the wall and drags him inside the wall. On the main Earth, we're shocked to see that the planet was being invaded by a race of aliens, and the heroes were doing their best to stop them. The attack was devastating. The aliens were just too many and overwhelming the heroes, but something unexpected happened. They stopped the attack and retreated back to their ships, leaving Earth without any explanation. Adam even spots someone in the sky flying at incredible speed, but they couldn't see who it was. The attack on Earth was devastating, causing mass destruction everywhere, and even their high school was closed down for repairs. Cecil blames Robot for the Guardians' inability to deal with the threat and fires him. The Immortal was placed as leader of the Guardians, and Robot was allowed to stay on the team. Meanwhile, the demon detective comes to the Pentagon and demands to speak with Cecil, saying that he finally figured out who killed the Guardians of the Globe. The secretary says that everyone already knows that it was Omni-Man, and laughs at him while asking if he watched the news recently. Meanwhile, Angstrom Livy brings his variant from the other dimension to a secret hideout near the docks, saying he will explain everything once they go inside. They enter the warehouse and find hundreds of other variants of themselves from other dimensions. Mark continues his life and goes on a date with his girlfriend Amber, while the city continues to rebuild itself after the devastating attack from aliens. At the end of the night, Mark asks Amber if they want to go inside his room just to talk, but he finds his mother drunk and passed out on the couch, so they go outside on the porch. They spend the night talking and kissing. The next day, Angstrom breaks inside the prison, using his dimension-shifting abilities, and asks the Mahler twins to follow him if they want to escape. The twins were beaten up and arrested by the Immortal earlier, and they gladly accept the invitation. Livy takes them to another dimension, saying he needs their help, and if they don't want to be stuck there, they should follow him. He brings the twins back to his hideout and tells them that out of all of his variants, only he has the ability to travel to other dimensions. He wants them to build a machine for him that can transfer the knowledge of each dimension from all of his variants inside his brain. The twins agree to help out and begin preparations to build a machine that can do this. Cecil asks Invincible to go to Manhattan and help out the Capes because a powerful villain was destroying the city. The Capes are a group of heroes working for the city, mostly on a strict schedule from 9 to 5. He meets a hero named Bolt and helps them by taking the villain all the way into space and suffocating him. The Capes are thankful for the help, and Mark is just happy he could help out. After everything that happened lately, high school was finally over, and all the students attend the celebration ceremony, but Mark gets a little carried away and throws his graduation hat a little too hard up in the sky. Mark has been working non-stop for the government, going everywhere Cecil asks him to go, and this time it's no different. Cecil tells Mark that ever since the invasion, the space program has become a priority, and the government is sending a shuttle to Mars and wants Invincible to go along and make sure nothing goes wrong. Mars is inhabited by the Martian people, but they mostly live underground and shouldn't be an issue. The astronauts arrive on Mars while Mark stayed behind, hiding so they couldn't spot him. They were taken prisoners by the Martian race and taken inside an underground base. Mark follows them, but was attacked by a bunch of squid creatures. The squids couldn't harm him, and he was taken by the guards to meet the Monarch Prime. The Monarch tells Mark that the squids arrived here many hundreds of years ago after a malfunction of their mothership caused it to crash on the surface. The squids have one mind, a single consciousness between all of them, linked through the minds of their hosts. But without hosts, they are easily manipulated, making them the perfect slave race. Invincible's skin was too strong for the squids also, but the Monarch wants to execute the astronauts just to be safe. Mark didn't allow it and attempted a rescue mission, saving the people and taking them back to the shuttle. They were able to safely escape the planet, but not everyone made it out safely. One of the astronauts was taken as a host by the squids, and his place was taken by a Martian man who returned back to Earth. A few days later, Invincible was sent on another mission, this time to deal with Titan, a criminal he had met before. Titan asks Invincible for help, saying he works for a guy named Machine Head, the top crime boss in the entire country, untouchable even by the police, doing whatever he pleases. Murder, drugs, he does it all. Mark agrees to help Titan defeat the crime boss and attacks his office together. However, Machine Head was protected by his personal guard of highly trained mercenaries like Battle Beast, Magnetak, Kursk, Furnace, Magmaniac, and the Tether Tyrant. The two of them didn't expect such strong villains to face, and they quickly got outmatched. Battle Beast attacked Invincible and completely destroyed him, knocking him out with just a few hits. Luckily, the Guardians of the Globe came to help and did their best against the villains. Black Samson and Bulletproof attacked Battle Beast, but he completely destroyed both of them, sending them both into instant comas. He was highly disappointed, saying he came to Earth because he was promised worthy combatants, but he only wasted his time coming here, so he left. After everyone left and Machine Head was arrested, Titan returned to the office and took his place, becoming the new crime boss. Chapter 5 begins in Mark's room, after Adam Eve visited him saying she wanted to talk. Eve tells Mark she wants to quit being a superhero and do something else. She has incredible powers that allow her to rearrange matter and create anything she wants. She wants to use these powers to help people and do some good in the world, and not just fight villains. Invincible can handle that. She says goodbye and tells Mark she is going to Africa to help people who need her most, but she promises to talk to him immediately after she settles in. Meanwhile, the Mahler twins inform Angstrom Livy that the machine they are building for him which will allow him to transfer all the knowledge from his variants from other dimensions into his mind, will be finished by next week. High school is finally over, and Mark and his friend William are now students and roommates at the upstate university. William asks Mark about his parents, but he doesn't want to talk about it and just goes to sleep. Their first day in the classroom is interrupted by a senior student named Sinclair, who never attended this class because he always thought it was beneath him. He is now forced to take the class to finish his school and acts like a jerk. Amber visits Mark, and the two of them walk around the campus, but out of nowhere, a hybrid robot attacks them, the same kind that attacked Mark when he first came to visit the university. Mark abandons Amber and changes into Invincible, immediately dealing with the hybrid, but when he returns, Amber is mad at him for abandoning her and doesn't want to talk to him. We later discover that these hybrid robots are actually manufactured by A.D. Sinclair, who has been experimenting on dead people, trying to bring them back to life in the form of hybrid robots. His experiments haven't been too successful. Most of the hybrids are brain-dead zombies who just want to kill themselves, so he wants to experiment on live subjects. Invincible is sent by Cecil on his next mission inside Midnight City. The city was cursed after the Midnight Magician cast a spell that shrouded the city in everlasting darkness. The government wants to take back the city and sends Invincible to inspect the area. He finds Nightboy, Darkwing's assistant, who has gone a little crazy, killing survivors still living inside the city. Nightboy takes Invincible inside the Shadowverse, a dark dimension without any light from which nobody could escape. However, Mark grabs his hand and refuses to let go, saying he won't let go unless he takes both of them out of there. Eventually, Nightboy surrenders, and both of them leave the dark place. Invincible takes him to the Pentagon, where he is handcuffed and arrested immediately. Next, we see Robot going inside a secret room, kneeling down and opening his suit for someone. Robot was secretly working for a disfigured person living inside a giant container, who tells him they need to get started. After the incident at the university with the hybrid, Amber refused to talk to Mark anymore, so he came to visit her. She was shocked to find him inside her room, and he wanted to tell her the truth, but before he could even begin, Cecil tells him there is another emergency and needs him immediately. Mark tells Amber he will come by later and explain everything, and then jumps out the window and flies away. Next, we see the Mahler twins informing Angstrom that the machine is almost finished. By this time tomorrow, all of the knowledge of his variants and their dimensions will be transferred into his mind. He will finally be able to explore the multiverse without having to risk entering a world too harsh to survive. Sinclair, the mad scientist student, was working on his next project, trying to bring the dead back to life, but this time, he took things one step further. He kidnapped one of the students from campus and operated on him, transforming him into a half-man, half-machine hybrid. Moments later, Mark returns to Amber's apartment, saying he is actually invincible, and that's why he's been so busy lately and disappearing on her, because he was out fighting villains and saving the world. Mark tells her everything about him, including his father, and she is happy that he finally told her the truth. She gets on top of him and takes off his suit, saying she is ready for more. While we let Mark and Amber have some privacy, we move to a story deep in space with Alan the alien, who was flying back to Telescria, the capital of the Coalition of Planets. Alan recalls the events that happened on his homeworld, Unop, when the Viltrum Empire attacked, and they were forced to leave the planet and survive in space. Eventually, his race was asked to join the Coalition of Planets, and they created breeding camps to ensure the survival of their species. Alan was born in such a camp and was part of an experiment to create a new breed of stronger warriors. Even though he was very strong, Alan was nowhere near the strength of a Viltrumite, and he barely survived an encounter with them. His job has been to travel the universe in search of powerful warriors, strong enough to face a Viltrumite. Alan reports back to the Council that Omni-Man abandoned his post on Earth, making him an outcast to the Viltrum Empire and a possible ally, and also that his son refused to join the Viltrum Empire. Alan then goes to meet his girlfriend and spends many beautiful hours together. While having dinner, Alan is attacked by 3 Viltrumites, who demand to know more details about the Viltrumite who abandoned his outpost and about his son. Alan mocks them, prompting the Viltrumites to attack him and completely destroy his body, leaving him for dead in space. However, Alan is recovered and taken to the infirmary, where doctors reattach his body together. Back on Earth, the Mahler twins finally finished building the machine for Angstrom, and they are ready to start the procedure. Cecil knows that the twins are up to something and sends Invincible to stop whatever they are doing. Mark breaks inside and attacks the twins, saying he is much stronger now compared to the first time they met. Livy panics and calls more Mahler variants from other dimensions to help him. He asks them to keep Invincible busy until the process is finished. The Mauler variants are too many and overpower Mark, but Ångström asks them not to kill him because he wants to do it himself. He takes off the machine attached to his head, but that only causes the whole machine to explode, destroying the hideout and everything around it. Invincible survives, but most of the Mauler variants are burned alive. Ångström also survives together with one of the Mauler variants, but something is different. Livy claims the experiment was a success, and he can feel the knowledge of every dimension being downloaded into his brain. However, his body is disfigured, and his brain has mutated, covering a big portion of his body. He is overwhelmed with rage, and goes into another dimension to heal his body, vowing to take his revenge when he returns. Chapter 6 begins with Rexplode fighting a giant squid mutant, but Invincible comes to help. He punches the giant squid, but Rexplode says he doesn't need any help and wants to deal with it himself. He uses his powers to charge a computer monitor, throws it at the creature, instantly killing it. He feels content with how the fight went, and returns to the base looking for his girlfriend, Duplicate. He finds her in the basement, cheating on him with the Immortal, just like he cheated on Adam Eve at the beginning of the series. Meanwhile, Mark visits his mother at home and finds her eating a sandwich, so he makes one for himself. Someone knocks on the door, and Debbie goes to see who it is. She is shocked to find a half-man, half-dog figure standing there, claiming he is Science Dog. Invincible attacks him immediately, saying he can't be real and that Science Dog is a comic book character. The figure tells Invincible to calm down, calling him by his real name, proving that he even knows his secret identity. Science Dog says he is an alien from another planet, and he came here to ask for his help. His planet is being attacked by a race of evil aliens, and they need him to stop the invasion. Mark agrees to go to their homeworld, even though Cecil was against the decision and told Mark to not leave Earth. The journey takes about 6 days, and Mark is incredibly bored, but eventually, they arrive on the planet. He is taken to see their leader and shocked to find out that his father, Omni-Man, is the leader on this planet. Mark hugs his father and starts crying, saying that even though he is still upset with him, he missed him greatly. Omni-Man says he came to this planet after he left Earth, and he will never be able to go back to Earth because he abandoned the Viltrumite outpost. This race of aliens is very fragile. They only live for 9 months, and their leader is always the oldest one among them. Since Nolan is hundreds of years old, he immediately became their leader. He claims that he is a changed man now. He abandoned the Viltrum ways and started a new life here, marrying a female on this planet named Andressa. Nolan says this is something normal for Viltrumites, to seek multiple partners and move on with their life, considering their life expectancy is so great. To prove it even further, he shows Mark his new half-brother, a child he made with his new wife Andressa. Meanwhile, back on Earth, a very powerful villain named Omnipotus the World Shaper attacked the world. Cecil was forced to assemble every hero from around the country to face this unprecedented threat. Omnipotus has the ability to change reality and is incredibly dangerous. He wants to drain this world of its life force and restore himself to full power. Luckily, the combined might of the heroes was enough to stand against him. Black Samson, who was put into a coma by Battle Beast earlier, recovered and had all of his powers back. He was able to push Omnipotus back into his own dimension and save the world from imminent destruction. Back on the alien planet, Nolan tells his son that the baby is half Viltrumite and half alien, meaning he will age faster than a Viltrumite, but slower compared to the rest of the aliens. In just a few months, he will be a teenager. He says that the Viltrum Empire knows he is hiding here, and already several agents are headed towards them. He wants Mark to help him fight against these agents and protect this planet. The Viltrumites already arrived, and Mark takes Andressa and the child towards some abandoned caves. One of the agents saw them and followed them inside, asking Mark to prove his strength and see if he is a worthy Viltrumite. Mark surprises him with a punch from behind and flies away, but the agent recovers and follows them. Moments before getting caught, Omni-Man surprises the agent from behind, giving Mark and Andressa enough time to escape. Nolan kills the agent, and after making sure that his son is safe, he takes Mark to attack the other agents together. The Viltrumites destroyed most of the cities and killed its people, causing Omni-Man to cry and be overwhelmed with rage. When the two agents revealed themselves, he jumped them, showing why he was considered a top agent of the Empire, showing his incredible speed and power. Sadly, Invincible was nowhere near as strong as these Viltrumites, and can't hold his own, or help his father very much. The fight between the 4 Viltrumites is brutal, but Mark was getting destroyed, and he is barely hanging on. His father gave everything he had and tried to save his son, destroying the 2 Viltrumites and shattering their bodies. However, the third agent was still alive, and he was able to surprise Omni-Man from behind, even though he was holding his organs in his hand. The agents called for reinforcements, who took Omni-Man prisoner and healed Invincible. One of them said that Mark proved himself a worthy member of the Viltrumite Empire, and he will be allowed to live. He was given 100 years to return to Earth and prepare the planet for invasion, and if he failed to do so, he would be executed on arrival. After he recovered from his injuries, Mark helped the aliens rebuild most of their cities, but Andressa had another favor to ask. She wants Mark to take her son back to Earth and protect him, saying that she will be dead in a few weeks, and the child will be all alone. Mark agrees, and returns to Earth with his half-brother. After being gone for over a month, he returns home and greets his mother, who says she was worried. Mark tells her she met with his dad on the planet, but he didn't want to talk about him. He does have a surprise, though, and shows her his half-brother, Nolan's son. Debbie is completely shocked to find out that Nolan remarried, and even had another child, but she accepts to help take care of him. Chapter 7 begins in Mark's home, while his mother was playing and taking care of his half-brother, Oliver. Debbie was shocked to find out Nolan remarried and had another son, but she thinks the kid is kinda cute, and agreed to raise him as her own. Meanwhile, Robot goes looking for the Mauler twins because he wants to hire their services. Robot was actually a man named Rudy Connors, who was born disfigured, and is forced to live inside a water tank that kept his body alive. He wants to hire the Mauler twins to help him transfer his mind inside a clone that he created. Rudy was one of the smartest people on Earth, and he was able to amass a great fortune, offering any price to the twins. Later, Mark visits his girlfriend, Amber, inside her dorm apartment and asks if she wants to visit Africa with him. She's very busy preparing for an upcoming test, but can't resist the urge to fly to Africa for free. Adam Eve had recently moved there and started a new life after she quit the Guardians of the Globe. With her incredible powers, she can reshape atoms and create anything she wants and prefers to help people in need rather than fight bad guys. She built a house from scratch, and she and Mark spend the morning talking about Omni-Man, but also about the fact that he feels guilty about abandoning Amber all the time to fight criminals. Mark receives a phone call from someone claiming his mother wants to speak with him. She asks Mark for help, and he immediately knew that something was wrong. He leaves the two girls and flies back home as fast as he could, screaming out his mother's name the moment he walked inside. He finds his mother and Oliver taken as hostages by Angstrom Livy, the man with the crazy ability to travel to other dimensions. Angstrom blames Invincible for his disfigured body after his machine exploded while Mark was fighting the Mauler twins. The machine actually exploded because Livy interrupted the process, but he doesn't remember the events happening that way and vows to torture and kill Mark and his family. Invincible wants to attack him, but Angstrom sends him to another dimension, one where dinosaurs were still alive and roaming free. These dinosaurs have the ability to speak but are not friendly and attack him. However, Angstrom brings him back only to torture him a bit more, saying just how much he is going to enjoy killing his family, and then sends him to another dimension. Here, he crosses paths with Dr. Octavius and even Spider-Man, but this was just the beginning. Angstrom keeps sending him from one universe to another, going from a world overrun with zombies to Gotham, where he meets even Batman. Eventually, Angstrom goes searching for him, but Mark jumps on him swiftly and grabs him by the throat. During the fight, another portal opens, and both of them start free-falling, going from dimension to dimension, eventually landing inside a barren wasteland. Angstrom keeps tormenting Invincible, saying how much he's going to enjoy killing his mother and even his half-brother, but this only causes Mark to lose control. Mark jumps on him and punches him mercilessly, going all out and completely losing control. However, he quickly realizes that his opponent wasn't as strong as he pretended to be and actually died. Mark was shocked. He didn't mean to kill him, but he also didn't realize just how weak he actually was. He was now stuck inside this dimension with no real way of returning home. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the Guardians of the Globe appear, claiming to be from the future. 15 years from now, time machines were invented, and they were able to find his dimension and travel back in time to save him. Before sending him back home, Adam Eve confesses her love for Mark, urging him to talk to Eve once he gets back to his own time. Mark returns to his own dimension and rushes to see his family, who were safe now and being treated for injuries inside the Pentagon. Meanwhile, the Mauler twins were successful in transferring Rudy's mind from his disfigured body inside the young clone, but he has other plans for the twins. Even though he was thankful for their help, the twins are villains, and he can't let them go. He brings a giant robot and arrests them. Rudy is one of the smartest minds on Earth, but he still wants to do the right thing and be part of the Guardians of the Globe. Eventually, Cecil introduces him to the rest of the crew, revealing the truth, that Rudy has always been the one controlling Robot. Rudy tells Monster Girl that he kinda likes her, That's why he created a younger clone instead of a full-grown adult, and asks her out. She says she doesn't have any friends, and agrees to meet with him during non-working hours. Monster Girl is actually a 29-year-old woman, but every time she transforms into her monster form, her human body gets younger. Mark visits Art the tailor, and asks him if he knows anything about his father's books. Before he was arrested by the Viltrumite's agents, Nolan told his son to read his books, and Art thinks he might know what his father meant. He brings out a bunch of unpublished books that his father wrote. Mark realizes that these books aren't just fiction, but actually events and people that his father met in the galaxy. He reads about a space rider who wields a powerful weapon that can kill Viltrumites, and even a race of monster aliens called Ragnar, with claws and teeth so sharp they could tear through Viltrumite flesh. Nolan wanted his son to know how he could defeat Viltrumites. Chapter 8 begins in the Guardians of the Globe locker rooms. After Rexplode just found out that Duplicate was marrying the Immortal, he reflects on their time spent together, but says he would have never married her, maybe someone like Adam Eve. The Guardians are called to fight a familiar villain named Seismic Doc, who just escaped prison and summoned an army of underground monsters to help him fight the heroes. During the fight, the Immortal is overprotective of Kate, which causes her to get mad at him for embarrassing her in front of the Guardians. Meanwhile, a new hero who calls himself Shapesmith appears. He was able to single-handedly restrain Seismic Doc and prevent him from escaping underground. Shapesmith is actually a Martian manhunter in disguise, and he came to Earth disguised as one of the astronauts that returned from Mars. The Immortal is impressed by his skills and asks him to join the Guardians of the Globe. Later, William asks Mark to help him find Rick, a student from the university who has been missing for 4 months. Fellow students have been disappearing around the campus, and William wants to be the bait to see if someone tries to kidnap him. He falls asleep on a park bench while Mark was keeping an eye on him from the tree. Several hours later, a hybrid, half-robot, half-human, arrives and kidnaps him, taking him inside the sewers. Mark follows him closely but is jumped by several Reanimen, and they are stronger than they look. He fights the hybrids, but is shocked to see that their friend Rick was actually one of these hybrids. The other one takes William inside the clock tower, where the mad scientist student, Sinclair, was performing experiments on people. He was kidnapping students from all over the campus and turning them into Reanimen, hybrid soldiers under his control. Mark was eventually able to break free and fly straight inside the tower, but their friend Rick stopped him. The hybrids were just too strong, and William pleaded with him to stop the attack. Eventually, some part of Rick was still in there, and he listened to his friend, turning on the other hybrids and helping Mark to free William. Sinclair tries to escape and runs away with his files, but Mark stops him and breaks his jaw. Cecil intervenes and asks to not kill him, while the cleanup crew takes his friends to the infirmary. After everything that happened, Mark flies to his girlfriend and finds another guy inside her bedroom. She says it's just a guy from school, and they were studying together, but Mark feels like there might be more to this. While the doctors were doing their best to turn Rick back into a normal human, Cecil visits Sinclair inside the jail and offers him a deal. He wants Sinclair to work for him and create more hybrid soldiers in exchange for time outside the prison cell. Meanwhile, back on Thalaskria, the capital of the Coalition of Planets, Alan the alien recovers after he was almost killed by the Viltrumite agents. He is visited by the leader of the Coalition, who tells him that ever since the attack, his body has become much stronger, very close to Viltrum levels. He knows this for a fact, because he himself is a Viltrum who deserted the mighty empire. Mark visits Adam Eve again in Africa and wants to talk about Amber. He thinks it's not fair to her to have a superhero boyfriend who always abandons her to fight villains and comes back months later. He remembers what the Eve from the future told him, and he decides to act, giving her a big kiss. Mark is unsure of his feelings, but before they can talk more and discuss what just happened, Cecil calls everyone to the Guardians of the Globe secret base for an emergency meeting. Cecil tells everyone that a big spaceship is flying from Mars and headed towards Earth. Shapesmith decides to come clean and tell everyone the truth, that he is actually a Martian manhunter, and he ran away from his planet because he didn't want to live there anymore. After he switched places with the astronaut back on Mars, the planet was probably overrun by sequids, a race of alien parasites that share a single mind and take control of other people, making them their slaves. The sequids have no effect on the Martian people because of their shape-shifting abilities, but the human astronaut was an easy target. The Guardians travel into space and break inside the giant spaceship, and are initially greeted by the Martians, who blame Shapesmith for the invasion and want to kill him. The Guardians convince the Martians to join forces and fight against an overwhelming amount of sequids that try to take control of them. Rudy came along wearing the robot suit and realized that all the sequids communicate with each other on a single frequency. He is able to find and scramble this frequency, causing all the sequids to lose control of the human host and fall asleep. The Guardians take the astronaut and want to leave before the sequids get a chance to bond with a human host again, but the Martians still wanted to kill Shapesmith because of his act of treason. However, Invincible didn't allow them to harm him. All of them escaped and safely returned back to Earth. While all of this was happening in space, back on Earth, the Lizard League took over a missile silo in Wyoming, hoping to blackmail the government into giving them money for not launching nuclear missiles. The leftover heroes like Rexplode, Shrinking Ray, and even Duplicate were sent to neutralize the threat. However, the fight was extremely brutal, and everyone except Rexplode was killed. Rex survived until the very end, and even had his hand bitten off when he put an explosive device inside one of the villains' mouths. However, the leader of the Lizard League was still alive, and shoots him in the head, but luckily he survives, and is able to knock him out with a powerful punch to the face. Mark returns to Earth and wants to see his girlfriend at the university, but when he gets there, he sees Gary, one of her friends from school, leaving her room. Mark feels sorry about abandoning her every time to go fight bad guys and monsters, but it's his job, and he can't escape his responsibilities. He loves Amber and wants what's best for her, and eventually they both agree that the two of them being together doesn't make much sense. They cuddle one last time and wish each other the best, before breaking up for good. Invincible visits Rexplode in the hospital, saying he feels horrible for missing the fight. But Rex couldn't help but feel jealous for all the praise Invincible got for stopping the alien invasion, while everything he had to do in Wyoming will remain a secret. The chapter ends with the astronaut that was left stranded back on Mars finally arriving home after being missing for several months. But there was something wrong with him. He wasn't himself. Several sequids survived and took control of his body, claiming that their plan is to take over the world. Chapter 9 begins on the moon, after the government built a space station there, and Invincible was sent to make sure nothing bad happens to it. One of the astronauts says he doesn't trust Invincible after his dad threatened to destroy the entire planet, but one of the astronauts that was sent on Mars defends Mark, saying he saved her life. Cecil calls Mark back on Earth to deal with a giant villain who was destroying the city and demanded to be appointed president. But before they could fight, the Guardians of the Globe arrive and take over the case. Mark returns home, and his mother tells him that Oliver has grown quite a lot since last time, thanks to his Thraxian DNA from his mother. Mark tells his brother he is still too young to get his powers, but while they enjoy a friendly game of baseball, Oliver surprises his brother by flying and catching the ball. Their mother is also impressed with how fast Oliver developed superpowers, but still, she doesn't allow flying inside the home. Meanwhile, at the Guardians' base in Utah, Immortal is mourning the death of his wife, Duplicate, and tells Cecil he never felt so bad about losing anyone before. The conversation is cut short when an unknown object approached Earth at high speed, and Immortal left to confront it. He flies into space and meets Alan the alien, who returned to Earth to speak with Invincible, but Immortal attacks him, believing he is an invader. Alan claims he wasn't hurt and that Immortal is weak, but before he can retaliate, Invincible shows up and calms everyone down. After a small introduction, Alan and Mark fly down to Earth to talk in private. Mark tells him about his father's books that he's been reading, trying to find ways to hurt the Viltrumite people, and also tells him about Oliver, his half-brother. The Immortal returns to base feeling even more depressed, and tells Cecil he wants to quit working for the Guardians, taking a leave of absence until further notice. After Alan left, Adam Eve visits Mark, saying she heard he is single now, after he broke up with Amber, and asks if they are dating now, or what. She tells Mark she always liked him, but when they first met she was dating Rex, and later he was dating Amber, and couldn't do anything about it. Mark likes Eve, but he isn't sure of what he should do, prompting Samantha to just leave. The next day, Debbie tells Mark about a guy named Paul she recently started seeing from work, but before they could get into more details, a female Viltrumite interrupts them, saying that she will kill his mother if he doesn't follow her immediately. Anissa was sent here to inspect Invincible's progress, and tries to convince him that Viltrumites are not just a warmonger race looking to conquer and destroy other races. She says that the Viltrum Empire helps other races and offers them technology in return for resources and hundreds of years of prosperity. But Invincible doesn't buy it. She wants to prove to Mark their intentions are noble and helps him defeat a giant monster and even save thousands of lives in the process. But Mark was still not impressed. Eventually, she loses her temper and threatens him, saying a replacement was already designated for this planet, but until he comes, he still has time to change his mind and work for them. If the planet is not ready for conquering by the time his replacement arrives, he will be executed, and the planet will be completely destroyed. While Alan the alien was returning back to the coalition of planets with good news, he is ambushed by the same Viltrumites deep in space. Alan was a lot stronger now, and he could even face a Viltrumite, but he realizes it's a better idea to just surrender and have them take him to their prison, where he will surely meet with Omni-Man, one of the few Viltrumites who ever rebelled against their people. After quitting the Guardians of the Globe, the Immortal retreats to one of his cabins in the mountain, but when he enters the door, he was shocked to find Duplicate still alive, claiming she needs his help to deal with her brother, Multi-Paul. Meanwhile, across town, Fightmaster and Dropkick, two people from the future, were stealing the Declaration of Independence, claiming to be from the future. Invincible and Rexplode managed to stop them, but they were surprised by Multi-Paul, Kate's brother. He accuses Rexplode of killing his sister during the nuclear silo mission in Utah and attacks him viciously. Just like Duplicate, Multi-Paul has the ability to create copies of himself in great number, quickly outnumbering the two heroes. Luckily, the Immortal and Duplicate arrive, claiming she was never killed in the mission because she always keeps the original Kate far away from danger and only sends her copies to do missions. On the other side of the galaxy, inside the Viltrum prison, Omni-Man was awaiting execution, but before that could happen, his body needed to be fully healed according to Viltrum's sacred laws. He sees Alan the alien being brought inside and transported to one of the cells, and remembers him from their many encounters on Earth. Invincible was fighting two villains who were robbing an armored truck. His brother followed him and watched as his brother quickly dealt with the villains and even intervened to punch one of the bad guys. Oliver loves helping his brother and asks if he can be his partner. Over at the Pentagon, Cecil Stedman visits D.A. Sinclair after he hired him to secretly work for the government and create an army of undead soldiers under the control of the United States Army. Chapter 10 begins with a massive attack on every League of Heroes from across the country, including the Dragon Crew in Chicago, the Dynamo 5 at the Aquarium, the Capes in New York City, and even the Guardians of the Globe in Washington, D.C. Nobody knows who organized the attack or how they knew exactly where to strike. Invincible went to visit Samantha in Africa after she confessed her love for him, and he left her standing, but she wasn't in the mood to talk. Cecil warns him of the attack on the heroes, and the two of them immediately fly back to help. Dr. Seismic escaped from prison and launched the attack on heroes, managing to capture all of them and trap them underground. Invincible breaks inside the cave and tries to stop the evil doctor, but he was confronted with two giant monsters that were incredibly powerful. Wolfman escapes also and tries to help, but they were overrun by the crazy amount of monsters, and Invincible gets knocked out. Stedman was left with no choice and asked A.D. Sinclair to send his army of Reaniman soldiers trained to work for the government. The new Darkwing leads the attack against Dr. Seismic, and he is able to free most of the heroes. Everyone joins forces and attacks the monsters together, turning the fight in their favor. Invincible wants to surprise the Doctor from behind, but Darkwing was faster and pulls the Doctor inside the Shadowverse and then knocks him out cold. Invincible punched Darkwing in the back, calling him a murderer. Mark arrested him a few months ago in Midnight City when he went completely crazy and started killing people inside the city. Stedman covered everything up that happened in Midnight City, and nobody even knew that Darkwing is a murderer. Mark confronts Cecil about hiring criminals to work for him, but loses his temper even more when he sees A.D. Sinclair was also working for him. Cecil defends his action, saying he will do everything he can to keep the country safe, including hiring criminals. He tells Mark to calm down, or he will unleash the Reaniman on him, but Mark refused to back down. Cecil shocks him using the earpiece he implanted in his ear, and Mark tries to fly away, but Cecil follows him around by teleporting behind him. Mark eventually flew towards the Guardians of the Globe and crashed inside their headquarters. Cecil tells everyone to stand down, but the heroes refuse to listen to him and help Invincible. Rudy is able to deactivate the device inside Mark's head, and Mark defended himself, destroying most of the Reaniman. He tells Cecil they are done working together and threatens to kill him if he ever comes in contact with him or his brother ever again. The heroes that helped Invincible all decided to leave the Guardians of the Globe and create their own League of Heroes. Mark returns home all bruised up and talks to Samantha, explaining everything that happened between him and Stedman. He also tells her that when he was being attacked by the Reaniman and he couldn't fight back, all he could do was think about her, and that he loves her very much. The two of them kiss for the second time, while Oliver watched from his window, saying that kissing is very gross. Next, we see a distant memory when Cecil was taken hostage by two villains who wanted to poison the world using a deadly gas, but Sir Britt was able to stop them. Cecil was hurt in the escape, that's why he has that scar on his face, and the two villains were presumed dead. Many years later, when the Pentagon was under attack, the two villains emerged again and stopped the attack. Cecil's boss faked their deaths and hired them to work for the government, which made Cecil realize what it means to use any means necessary to achieve your goal. Later, he did the same thing when he contacted Omni-Man and made a deal with him to work for the government. Everything Cecil did over the years was to keep his country safe, no matter the cost. Back in the present, Invincible and his brother get new suits from the tailor, and Oliver joins him on their mission together, calling himself Omni-Kid. When two villains attacked the Stronghold Penitentiary trying to break out Multipol, Oliver ignored his brother's orders and charged them head-on. He was immediately electrocuted and knocked unconscious, falling on the ground. Luckily, his brother was there to save him and deal with the criminals, shouting at his brother to never do that ever again. Mark ends the night with Eve on the rooftop talking about his brother, but someone was watching them from far. Livy Angstrom was still alive after Mark nearly killed him, and he came back to get revenge. The next day, the Mahler twins attacked the nuclear silo in Utah and quickly took over the base. Invincible and his brother came to stop them, but the twins said they planned to launch one of the rockets into space and disrupt communication satellites. The twins wanted to launch one of the rockets into the sun and create a giant solar flare, disrupting every communication satellite and forcing nations to pay them if they wanted to bring them back online. While Invincible left to prevent one of the rockets from leaving Earth's atmosphere, his brother was left behind to deal with the twins. Oliver goes all out and kills one of the twins, leaving the other one in shock. When he saw how strong Oliver actually was, the other twin gave up, saying he surrenders. But Oliver didn't stop there. He punched him straight in the head, killing him in an instant, and then defended his actions, saying it was an accident. Mark returns to the base and is mad at his brother for killing the twins, and on top of that, Oliver didn't even feel sorry, saying it's better to deal with villains this way so they never return. Now that Invincible wasn't working for Stedman anymore, he had to patrol the streets on his own and seize Titan, the city's new crime boss, sitting outside the penitentiary. Titan was working for a larger mafia boss and was tasked with breaking out Multipol from prison. The previous attempt failed, and Titan wanted to do it himself, but his boss, Mr. Liu, grew impatient and showed up instead. Using a soul projector manifested in the form of a giant dragon, he was able to break out Multipol from prison and escape before Invincible could do anything. Chapter 11 begins in Paris with Mark and Samantha having a romantic dinner next to the Eiffel Tower, when out of nowhere, a portal opens, and two guys from the future emerge. Invincible encountered Fightmaster and Dropkick before when they tried to steal the Declaration of Independence, but this time, they came to ask for his help. They bring Invincible into the future and ask him to fight their king because he completely lost his mind. Mark was shocked to see the king was none other than the Immortal, who looked noticeably older now, but still alive and kicking. The king tells him that Mark left Earth hundreds of years ago, leaving him alone to rule the planet, but he grew tired of being immortal while seeing everyone around get older and die. He asks Invincible to kill him, he's the only one who can do this, and begs him to do it. Mark didn't want to do it, but he was left with no choice, and rips off his head in a moment of rage. The two guys from the future return Mark to the present just seconds after leaving, and he was able to continue his date with Samantha. Meanwhile, somewhere deep in space inside the Viltrumite prison, Alan the alien let himself be arrested just to get closer to Omni-Man and help him escape. Alan was a lot stronger now, and the guards couldn't even kill him, so they just gave up. Alan talked telepathically to Nolan inside the prison and became good friends, and eventually, he tried to escape. He let other prisoners out to create a distraction, including Battle Beast, who was also a prisoner there. Two Viltrumite agents were performing the execution, beating the life out of Omni-Man when they broke him out. The two of them joined forces and killed the agents, and Nolan said that nobody else was coming, because there are less than 50 pure-blooded Viltrumites left in the whole universe. Back on Earth, Mark wakes up next to Samantha in bed after a wild night together, and talk about lacking privacy by living with their parents. Things would be much easier if they had a place of their own. Mark receives a phone call and says he needs to leave, promising to explain everything later. His ex-girlfriend Amber has a new boyfriend named Gary, but even though she says he is nice to her, last night he lost his temper and hit her. Mark was furious and left immediately searching for Gary. He threatens to kill him if he ever dares to lay his hand on Amber again. While this was going on, Mark's brother was out on his first solo mission, dealing with a giant metal robot villain. Kid Omni-Man did pretty good on his first mission, but in the end, his brother had to step in and end the fight. Mark returns home and tells Samantha everything that happened with Amber, saying he has a problem with temper and almost killed that guy for hitting her. While talking to his brother outside, Oliver sees a reflection hidden in the trees, and Mark tries to catch it, but it exploded. Someone was watching them and recording their action. Invincible thinks that Cecil Stedman was behind this and visits the Pentagon, using this opportunity to destroy some more reanimate soldiers. Cecil says it's not him and asks Mark for a favor, to hunt and arrest Wolfman, who murdered his wife in cold blood. Mark agrees and goes looking for Wolfman and finds him fighting a giant cyclops in the forest. After defeating the monster, Wolfman says he didn't kill his wife, blaming the murder on Zachariah, one of his mentors. Mark believes him and brings him to Cecil to explain what really happened, but Stedman refuses to listen, saying the justice system will deal with him. Mark defends Wolfman once again and helps him escape the Pentagon, but is stopped on the way by the Guardians of the Globe. He pleaded with them to listen, saying that Stedman is no stranger to working with criminals, but they were loyal to the government and began fighting. Invincible was able to grab the immortal by the head and spins around, knocking out all the other heroes, and then sends him flying tens of feet into the air. Wolfman visits his daughter, who thinks he killed her mother, but he swears he's innocent, and their family friend confirms that Wolfman is a good person. He asks Invincible to do one more thing for him, return back to the forest where he first found him. After leaving, we see a mysterious figure hiding in the darkness. Battle Beast was secretly helping Wolfman. Samantha prepared a surprise for Mark, saying she created a private security company in his name, allowing him to work for prisons, power plants, factories, and other places that always seem to have a problem with criminals. This way they can make money and buy a place of their own. Mark wasn't too fond of the idea at first, but ultimately thinks it's a good idea and spends the night together with her. We see a glimpse of the apartment of Russ Livingston, the astronaut that returned from Mars. He was being fully controlled by sequids who were multiplying and preparing an invasion very soon. Meanwhile, somewhere else, many invincible variants from different dimensions were all gathered in one place by one man. Livy Angstrom was preparing his revenge on Invincible, creating his diabolical master plan. A villain named Powerplex was causing a mess and scaring people, trying to get Invincible's attention. When Omni-Man fought his son, the aftermath was devastating, destroying many cities and killing thousands of people, including his sister. Powerplex wanted nothing else but to avenge his sister's death and wanted to kill Invincible. He used his wife and baby as bait, tying them up inside an abandoned warehouse, while Invincible came to their rescue. He surprised Mark from behind while he was untying his wife and son, but something went terribly wrong. Powerplex's biggest weakness was that he couldn't fully control his power. He was leaking energy, and when he attacked Invincible, he leaked an incredible amount of energy, killing his family in the process. Even though it was all his fault, he still blamed Invincible for making him do this and vowed to kill him and avenge his family. Chapter 12 begins with a flashback to 5 months ago, right after Invincible killed Livy Angstrom. He didn't know that Angstrom was so weak and went all out on him, but the mad scientist wasn't dead. He survived and managed to teleport to another dimension. There, a strange alien race took care of him and rebuilt his body using advanced medicine. Many months later, Angstrom traveled the multiverse and gathered many evil Invincible variants and launched an attack on Earth. All major cities from around the world were attacked by these variants, causing massive destruction and devastation all around. Angstrom wanted revenge on Invincible for disfiguring his body and nearly killing him, and wanted the people to fear him. That's why he gathered variants that look exactly like him. He wanted to destroy Invincible's reputation and make the people hate and fear him forever. When the Pentagon was attacked, Stedman called all available heroes to defend the country and stop these variants. The fights were brutal, with many casualties on both sides. Rexplode was killed by one of his own explosions. Even Adam Eve was injured, and Invincible rushed her to the hospital and refused to continue to fight. He stayed by her side and let the other heroes deal with the invasion. The variants were extremely powerful, and it only took them 3 days to completely take over the world. Eventually, the variants turned on Angstrom himself and wanted to kill him, so he was forced to send them to an abandoned dimension with no way of returning back. Invincible finds Livy and jumps at him, threatening to kill him for all the destruction and suffering he caused around the world, but he tried to escape. Mark grabbed his hand before he could teleport away and refused to let go. When the portal closed, Angstrom managed to escape, but he lost his arm in the process. Mark visits Samantha in the hospital, but she was unconscious, still recovering from the accident. He decides to let her recover while he helps the other heroes search for survivors. He spends the next few days clearing the debris and helping to recover dead bodies. As if the devastation caused by Angstrom wasn't enough, a Viltrumite agent arrives on Earth. He claims his name is Conquest, and he was sent here to replace him and take over the planet, and threatens to kill Mark if he opposes him. Invincible refused to back down, and the two of them begin a brutal fight. Conquest, however, is one of their strongest Viltrumite agents, who has never failed to take over a planet before. He says he likes to fight and wants Invincible to go all out and give everything he has in him, but it still wasn't enough. Oliver comes and tries to help his brother, but he was nowhere near as strong as them, and gets pushed aside easily. Meanwhile, Samantha wakes up in the hospital and asks her parents what happened to Mark. She sees him on TV fighting Conquest and rushes immediately to the scene to help him. She tries to trap Conquest inside a sphere of energy, but he easily destroys it by clapping his hands. Conquest then punches her in the face and stabs her through the abdomen using his hand, leaving a big hole inside her body. Mark rushed to grab her as she was falling to the ground and prayed for her to still be alive. Conquest thanks Invincible for allowing him to go all out. It's been a long time since he's done this, and he loves every minute of it. Invincible is infuriated and loses control, breaking Conquest's robotic arm with a powerful punch. He then continues a series of attacks, punching, kicking, and even biting, and taking a big chunk of flesh from the mad Viltrumite. Out of nowhere, Samantha recovers from her injuries, and her body completely heals up, allowing her to get up and launch a devastating blast of energy towards Conquest. The blast was powerful enough to completely burn off his body, but he still refused to give up. Mark then pinned him to the ground and continued the attacks with a series of headbutts that completely destroyed Conquest's face. When he was done, the Viltrumite agent was left unconscious in his own blood with his face completely disfigured. Mark then makes his way to Samantha, who was completely naked on the ground, and tells her how much he loves her. She responds back, while all the heroes arrive to witness this beautiful moment. A few days later, Mark requested to see Conquest's body to make sure he was dead, and Cecil showed him a fake body, while the real Viltrumite was being kept inside a remote military base, deep underground. The heroes attend a ceremony dedicated to the fallen heroes, including Rex Splode, and Samantha can't help herself from crying while giving a big speech. Mark visits his brother in the hospital and says that he was right. He needs to take a stronger stand against future threats, and vows he won't hesitate to kill next time. Chapter 13 continues the story, deep in space. After Omni-Man and Alan the alien escaped from prison, Nolan decides to tell Alan the truth about the Viltrum Empire. After the Empire began expanding and conquering many worlds, their enemies created a special virus called the Scourge virus, which had devastating effects on the Viltrumite population. Thousands were killed by the virus, but in the end, the Empire endured, and the strongest Viltrumites survived. From this point forward, the Empire expanded at a much slower pace, with single agents being designated entire planets and spread across the galaxy. The two of them return to Talescria, the capital of the coalition of planets, and Alan invites Nolan to sleep over at his home, which surprises his girlfriend, who shoots Nolan with her rifle. Nolan informs Thetis of the many weapons they can use against the Viltrumites, and sends them to collect these weapons and prepare for war. Approximately 100 years ago, Nolan was able to defeat the space racer by trapping him inside a giant asteroid. Thinking he was long dead, they returned to collect his weapon that can kill Viltrumites. But the racer was still alive after all this time and recovers. He wanted to kill Nolan for trapping him inside the asteroid all this time, but Alan convinced him to join them in their fight against the Viltrumite Empire. The three of them return to Talescria and report back, while Thetis asks them to continue their mission and gather more weapons to use against the Viltrum Empire. Next, they visit a planet that was full of Ragnar creatures, powerful beasts that can easily kill and eat Viltrumites. The encounter didn't go as planned, and the two of them barely made it out alive. The next stop was on a planet where a great warrior called Battle Beast lived. This warrior was invulnerable and immortal, and the planet's protector, but he left a long time ago, searching for conflict worthy of his unique abilities. Back on Talescria, Thetis shows Nolan the Scourge virus and tells him that he was the one who created it and used it against his own people. Back on Earth, Invincible was fighting a new villain called Dinosaurus, who wanted to cause massive devastation worldwide, resulting in the deaths of millions of people in densely populated cities. This in turn would result in a substantial decrease in carbon emissions, leading to a possible end to global climate change. Invincible punched him so hard, revealing that he was actually just a normal man with the ability to transform into a dinosaur. Even though he wasn't transformed anymore, Mark still wanted to hurt him and possibly kill him, but the Guardians of the Globe arrived. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Mojave Desert inside a secret underground base, Conquest was still alive and trapped inside a giant metal prison. Eventually, his body fully healed, and he escapes, flying straight into space, claiming that Invincible was a fool for leaving him alive. Somewhere in the sewers underground, the astronaut who returned from Mars and was being controlled by the Sequids was preparing an invasion, gathering thousands of aliens and mind-controlling as many people as they could. Samantha was locked inside the bathroom, and Mark asks if something is wrong. She was crying because she just took a pregnancy test and found out she was pregnant. Even though Earth was plagued with many attacks recently, they were mostly far between, and never really two at the same time, until today. On one side, a powerful warrior queen from another world called Universa arrived on Earth, claiming she wants to steal the planet's resources because her planet is dying. She attacks a power plant, wanting to steal as much energy as possible and return it to her own people. But Invincible and Adam Eve try to stop her. While this was going on, the Sequids launched their attack on the surface world, wanting to take control of every person on Earth, and the Guardians of the Globe were sent in to deal with the situation. Rudy created special bracelets that can disrupt the Sequids' control for a few seconds, allowing them enough time to save people. Universa uses a powerful staff to shock Invincible and pin him to the ground. Eve surprises her from behind with a powerful punch, but ever since she came back from the dead, her powers have been acting strangely, and she loses her focus. Invincible was able to grab the staff from her hands, and even though it knocked him unconscious, Eve took out Universa with a powerful punch to the face. Invincible now headed towards the other attack and grabbed the Sequids leader by the head, throwing him against the sea of alien squids. The heroes used the bracelets to disrupt the mind control and free as many people as they could, but the Sequids were just too many. Eventually, Invincible lost control and punched the astronaut, decapitating his head and cutting the link between the Sequids. Robot was shocked and couldn't believe that Invincible killed the astronaut, and Mark regretted his action later. He says he had to kill him to end the invasion, but he's worried that he can't control himself anymore. Meanwhile, Conquest returns to the Viltrumite base and reports back to his superiors, who are very displeased with his failure to capture Earth. Thrag, the leader of the Viltrumite Empire, calls him an animal and orders him to go back and kill Invincible and leave no one alive. Invincible finds himself in the middle of a turf war between Titan, the new crime boss in town, and the criminal organization called The Order. The Order was run by Mr. Liu, who wanted to kill Titan, but Invincible had a bad habit of helping him. Invincible finally realized that Titan was just as bad as the other criminals, and wanted to kill him. But Stedman arrived and wanted to arrest everyone. Mark spends the evening talking to Samantha and tells her that he doesn't want to kill anymore. He doesn't like how it changes him, and wants to do the right thing. Before they could end the talk and head for dinner, Omni-Man and Alan the alien arrive, saying they need him to go to war. Chapter 14 begins with the heroes fighting the Flaxen armies after they tried to invade Earth once again. This time, to counteract the rapid aging on Earth, they equipped the tanks with special distortion fields. However, Robot was able to spot this and ordered everyone to destroy the tanks. This caused the aliens to age instantly, forcing them to retreat back into their own dimension. But Robot wanted to follow them and deal with the Flaxen invasions once and for all. The others didn't think this was a good idea, so only he and Monster Girl went through the portal. Meanwhile, Omni-Man and Alan were looking for someone. They wanted Tech Jacket to join them in the war against the Viltrum Empire, and he gladly accepted. Nolan returns home and meets with Debbie, telling her that while he was inside the Viltrum prison, he couldn't stop thinking of her. He says he is a changed man and hopes she can forgive him, but Debbie doesn't think she can ever do that. Before leaving to fight the Viltrumites, Nolan also thinks that bringing his other son along might be useful, and decides to take Oliver along. Mark spends the night cuddling with Samantha, acknowledging that this might be their last night spent together, not really knowing if he will ever return from this war. While they were out in space, traveling towards the coalition of planets, their spaceship was attacked by a squad of Viltrumite agents, led by Conquest himself. Invincible didn't understand how he was still alive after Cecil showed him Conquest's dead body back on Earth and demands some answers. Like all Viltrumite fights, this one is also very brutal, with the heroes having to fight the agents and also their spaceship, which was firing at them. Oliver ran out of breath and wanted to rush towards a nearby planet to get some air, but Conquest followed him and wanted to kill the young boy. Invincible was right behind them and jumped at Conquest, grabbing him by the throat and threatening to kill him. When he refused to let go, Conquest punched a hole right through his abdomen, his hand emerging on the other side, just like he did with Adam Eve back on Earth. But Mark refused to let go of his throat and continued to choke him. Eventually, Conquest ran out of air, and Invincible killed him, but the injury he sustained was devastating, and he was left unconscious on the ground. The Viltrumite agents couldn't find them anymore and left the area while Alan and Tech Jacket hid aboard their ship. Nolan bandaged his son and told Oliver they need to wait on this planet until Mark was fully healed, which could take months. They spent the next months bonding as father and son, training and surviving by eating the insects on this planet, which were very delicious according to Oliver. While this was taking place, Alan reunited with the coalition of planets and launched attacks on Viltrumite-controlled worlds, but the attacks failed and the casualties were great. Thrag decides this is an opportunity to strike back and orders his fleets to attack Taliscria, the heart of the coalition of planets. The fighting was devastating to the planet, entire cities being wiped out and its people killed. Even Thetis, who was a Viltrumite himself, joined the fight. But it was not enough, and the coalition was losing the war until Omni-Man and his two sons arrived. They were able to quickly turn the war in their favor, going head-to-head with the Viltrumites, and eventually, Thrag was forced to retreat to prevent the loss of further Viltrumite life. However, the coalition wanted to finish this and gathered their strongest members to head towards the Viltrum planet and kill the remaining Viltrumites. They arrived and were greeted with a gruesome sight. The planet was surrounded by thousands of dead Viltrumites who fell victims to the Scourge virus, but one of them was still alive, and she attacked them. Thula was a cunning assassin and was hiding among the dead bodies, but Battle Beast attacked her and pulled her aside to fight. Meanwhile, Thrag and the rest of his warriors were rushing towards them, threatening to kill them. However, an unexpected surprise appeared out of nowhere. The space racer arrived carrying many Ragnar creatures, which he sent to attack the Viltrumites. Everyone was holding their own, but Thrag was just too powerful. A full punch from Invincible, and he didn't even flinch. Oliver wanted to try as well, but this proved to be a mistake, because Thrag broke his hand off, and then his jaw, leaving Oliver for dead. Invincible was infuriated, going all out on Thrag, claiming he killed Conquest, and now he was going to kill him as well. But the fight was evenly matched, with no clear winner in sight. That's when Thetis got an idea. He asked Omni-Man and his son to follow him and fly towards the core of the planet at maximum speed. They entered the planet's core and emerged on the other side, causing a big disaster and the entire Viltrum planet to explode. The explosion was devastating and caused everyone to scatter, and Thrag was visibly affected by this. Thetis asked him to surrender, saying he doesn't have an empire anymore. His armies were decimated, and his planet was destroyed. But this infuriated Thrag, who launched himself at Thetis, grabbing his head and removing it from his body. He then held it in his hand, claiming the rest of them were next. He went all out, dealing first with Omni-Man, while Invincible was still mourning his brother's death. He dealt with Battle Beast in an instant, discarding him like he was nothing. Alan was fighting off the other Viltrumites, but losing badly. Space Racer jumped to his rescue and saved him and Tech Jacket, and then ran away. Omni-Man tells his son that Thrag was trained from birth to be the best and strongest Viltrumite of all, capable of leading the Empire, meaning they have no chance of actually defeating him alone. Thrag punched Omni-Man through the stomach, leaving a big hole inside his abdomen, but he hesitated when it came to killing Invincible. He calmed his rage and told the other Viltrumites he would spare their lives because he needs them to ensure the survival of their race. Eventually, their bodies were recovered by the Coalition and taken to the infirmary to recover. His dad and Oliver were still alive, while Alan said he was appointed as the new leader of the Coalition of Planets after Thetis was killed in battle. Invincible realizes that Thrag left them alive in order to make them suffer by going to Earth and killing everyone. He imagines the Viltrumites already on Earth, killing everyone they ever cared about, including his girlfriend Samantha. They arrive back on Earth, and Invincible flies towards the planet at maximum speed, and Thrag greeted them. He said he has done nothing to the planet yet and offers them a peace deal. He wants him and the other Viltrumites to live among the people on Earth and build lives here. He wants his people to mate with the Earth females and create offspring, thus ensuring the survival of the Viltrumite people. If they refuse his offer, he would kill everyone on this planet. Nolan and his son accept the peace offer, and Thrag leaves, saying they will never see each other again. Mark returns home and goes to see Samantha, who has gotten a little fatter while he was away, but he says he likes the new look. Nolan meets with his wife and tells her how sorry he is for putting her through this, and claims he will never lie to her ever again. After dealing with the Viltrumite threat, at least for now, Invincible goes back to leading a normal superhero life, fighting villains and putting them behind bars where they belong. However, while he was gone, Samantha and his mother have become close friends, and Mark has a hard time getting used to it. Meanwhile, at Stronghold Penitentiary, the human form of Dinosaurus, a former villain that tried to cause massive destruction, figures out how to transform into his dinosaur form, and escapes the prison. After the last attack on the planet from Livy Angstrom and his invincible variants, the immortal decided to quit the superhero life and become a full-time dad. He and Duplicate had 2 children, and Mark and Samantha are invited over for dinner. Seeing how cute the babies are causes Samantha to get emotional, and she starts crying. Mark tries to console her and asks what's wrong, and that's when she came clean. Before Mark left with his dad to fight the Viltrumites, she got pregnant, and during the 9 months he was away, she had an abortion. She said she wasn't ready to be a mother and couldn't bear to raise children alone, not knowing if Mark would ever return. When they return home, Mark's parents tell them that they decided to reconcile and give their marriage another shot. They want to leave Earth for a while and visit Oliver on Tailscria, the homeworld of the coalition of planets. The next day, Mark visits his friend William and is shocked to find out he was gay and living together with their common friend from the university, Rick. After escaping from prison, Dinosaurus went right back to living a criminal life and attacks Las Vegas. He tells Invincible that he plans to completely destroy the city because he considers it a drain on natural resources of epic proportions, and if this keeps up, the Colorado River will soon dry up. Dinosaurus planted hundreds of bombs throughout the city and claimed that Invincible won't be able to find all of them in time. Sadly, he was right, and the bombs exploded, causing the entire city of Las Vegas to be destroyed, leaving a giant mirror in its place. Dinosaurus wanted the entire area to be replaced with a giant solar farm, producing enough energy to satisfy the country's needs. A few days later, Powerplex attacks Invincible, blaming him for all the destruction the country had to endure because of him, including the attack on Las Vegas. However, instead of fighting him, Mark just absorbed the energy blasts and talked to him. He was able to convince Powerplex that none of these attacks happened because of him, and that he alone was responsible for killing his own wife and son. Cecil Stedman asks Robot to lead the new Guardians of the Globe, after the Immortal quit and decided to be a full-time dad. Rudy and Monster Girl had previously teleported to another dimension where the Flaxen Empire was living, and helped save their world and bring world peace. But ever since they came back, things haven't been the same between him and Monster Girl. Something happened while they were away. After everything that happened in Las Vegas, Invincible decides to visit Universa in prison and offers her a deal. He offers to give her as much energy as she can take and bring it back to her own people and hopefully save her planet. Universa was grateful for the help and hopes that one day she can repay his kindness. After the attack on Las Vegas, Dinosaurus turned himself in, and Cecil visits him inside the prison. Recognizing his potential, Cecil offers him a position at the Pentagon to work for him, and he accepted. Monster Girl celebrates her birthday, and the Guardians of the Globe gather around her to wish her the best. While she was trapped with Robot in the Flaxen dimension, she aged 12 years and didn't look like a young girl anymore, so every guy was hitting on her. Mark asks Rudy if everything is okay between them, but something happened in the other dimension, and things were far from okay. Cecil calls Mark to Las Vegas to show him something. Dinosaurus invented a double-sided solar panel that is able to absorb twice as much solar power from the giant mirror that was created after the city was destroyed. Even though what he did was terrible, the aftermath had very positive effects, and the solar panel array will provide cheap, clean energy for nearly half of the citizens in this country. Invincible realized that sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good and visits Dinosaurus inside the Pentagon. He offers him a deal to work together and change the world for the better, but maybe without killing so many people in the process. Mark helps Dinosaurus escape and goes directly to his secret hideout, where they prepare to save the world together. Chapter 16 continues the story in space, with Omni-Man and his wife traveling to Talascria to meet their son Oliver, but the two of them couldn't keep their hands off each other, even though it was very hard to get some privacy. After being nearly killed by Thrag, Oliver recovered and grew up quite a bit. He wasn't just a little kid anymore. He loved living on Talascria and lived together with Alan while continuing to be a superhero and fighting bad guys. Both his parents were happy to see him, and Debbie couldn't be happier to finally hug him again. Even though she is only his foster mom, they became very close, and she loves him very much. Nolan tells Alan what happened on Earth, and how he made a deal with Thrag to let the Viltrumites live on Earth in peace, but Alan doesn't like this one bit, and is worried about the whole situation. The next day, Alan tells Nolan that he thought about it, and wants to use the Scourge virus against Thrag and his people, but Nolan hates this idea, and says this means the extermination of his race. He believes that by allowing the Viltrumites to live on Earth and reproduce, it will change them, just like it changed him. The two of them disagree and start fighting, and Nolan tries to steal the virus from Alan, but it was too late. He had already moved it. Human DNA is very similar to Viltrum DNA, and there is a very high chance that the Scourge virus will also affect the human population, possibly killing every human on Earth. Alan knows this, but as the new ambassador of the Coalition of Planets, he is willing to take the risk for the good of the galaxy. Oliver tries to help his father, but he soon realizes that what Alan is suggesting makes sense, and he didn't like humans that much anyway. Alan's guards try to arrest him, but Nolan manages to escape and fly down to Telescria to explain everything to his wife, moments before he was arrested. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Invincible was now working with Dinosaurus, and they joined forces to take down a powerful villain named Omnipotus. This enemy came from another dimension and wants to drain this world of all energy. He quickly incapacitates all of the heroes, but Dinosaurus was able to bite his head off, which caused his body to explode and kill him. When they recovered, the Guardians of the Globe wanted to arrest the two of them, because Dinosaurus was still a wanted man after what he did in Las Vegas, but Invincible flew away and helped him escape. Mark returns home and explains what happened to Samantha, but she doesn't believe it's a good idea to work together with a wanted criminal. Cecil intervenes, but not to arrest Mark. Instead, he informs him that Alan the alien is in Earth's orbit again. When Alan and Oliver finally arrived in Earth's orbit, Mark flew to greet them, but he had no idea what they had planned. Alan tells Mark about the Scourge virus and his plan to release it on Earth, but just like his father, Mark opposes this idea and attacks him. Alan claims that his father couldn't stop him from coming here, so what chance does he have? But he wasn't alone. Thrag was monitoring all incoming transmissions, and he came to help Invincible. Thrag claims that even if Alan uses the virus on him, he is still strong enough to kill him before the virus has any effect on his body. He offers a truce to let his people live in peace on Earth, and he promises not to make any move on the Coalition of Planets. But before they could come to an agreement, the Guardians of the Globe arrived and wanted to arrest Mark. Chaos soon erupted, and Oliver used this opportunity to steal the virus from Alan and flew towards Earth with the intention of using it. Mark tries to stop him, and during the fighting, he was infected by his brother. At first, Mark claimed that he didn't feel anything wrong with him, but pretty soon he started bleeding from his eyes and nose. Thrag took Invincible to his spaceship and offered to help treat him, claiming that his people have been dealing with the virus for centuries and are best equipped to deal with it. Alan goes looking for Dinosaurus and brings him to the Viltrumite spaceship. He tells Thrag they need his help because Dinosaurus is one of the smartest beings in the galaxy, and they need his help to try and cure Invincible. While Mark was recovering, Bulletproof offers to help Adam Eve run her private security firm and work for her under the Invincible name. One of the scientists informs Thrag that he found something extraordinary while analyzing Invincible's blood. His blood is a perfect match with the late King Argol, meaning that Invincible's father is a direct descendant of King Argol. Thrag kills the scientist in cold blood in order to protect this secret, claiming that nobody can know the truth. Thrag visits Invincible while he is recovering in the infirmary and wants to kill him, saying that he dedicated his entire life to the Viltrum Empire, and he wasn't going to let some traitor take his place. However, before he could kill him, he was attacked from behind by Dinosaurus, but his attacks did no damage. The Viltrumite leader was just too strong. Thrag destroys Dinosaurus and breaks his jaw, but he was forced to leave and deal with two powerful explosions in another part of the ship. Even though he was gravely injured, Dinosaurus was able to take Mark and escape using a smaller shuttle. Chapter 17 continues the story after Dinosaurus rescued Invincible from the Viltrumite spaceship and took him back to Earth. Even though he was gravely injured in the battle against Thrag, every time he changes back to his human form, the dinosaur form is healed completely. Adam Eve visits the spaceship, and Thrag tells her that Invincible was kidnapped by Dinosaurus. Believing that something bad might happen to him, Eve asks Alan the alien, Oliver, and even Bulletproof for help to retrieve him. All of them storm the hideout, not knowing that the two of them were working together, and Dinosaurus actually saved Mark's life. Alan and Oliver jump Dinosaurus together, but he is incredibly strong, and it isn't easy. Mark tells them to stop, but they refuse to listen, so he tries to punch Alan. However, the effects of the virus were beginning to show themselves, and he completely broke his hand in the process. Mark is taken to the Pentagon, and his hand is bandaged by doctors, while Cecil says that he is to blame for anything bad that Dinosaurus does from this moment forward. Out of nowhere, the Pentagon is attacked by a group of aliens who call themselves Squidmen. Their leader orders everyone to attack, but the Guardians of the Globe quickly intervene. The Squidmen are quickly outmatched, having to deal with Bulletproof, Invincible's replacement, Yeti, and even Monster Girl, who knocks out the leader with one punch. However, after the threat is dealt with, Monster Girl destroys one of Rudy's robots, prompting everyone to question what the hell happened between the two of them while they were trapped in the Flaxen dimension. After the last invasion, Robot wanted to go to their own dimension and prevent the Flaxen Empire from attacking Earth ever again, but only Monster Girl followed him. After arriving on their homeworld, they are quickly outnumbered and forced to surrender. They are taken prisoners, and the Flaxens perform tests on them, while Robot tries to learn their language and find a way to return home. During their time spent inside the prison, they become friends with other prisoners, who tell them that their leader organizes fights to the death between champions. Monster Girl is chosen as his champion because of how strong she is. Since being in this dimension, none of them have aged one day. Time passes very slowly in this dimension. After 20 years spent in this world, Robot plans an attack and wants to kill the leader, but they fail, and both of them are sent to work as slaves to rebuild a great city that was destroyed when Omni-Man was trapped here. Robot and Monster Girl become well known in this city and form a resistance with the slaves that quickly outnumber the number of soldiers. It takes nearly 100 years to rebuild the city and organize the resistance, gathering supplies and building tunnels underneath the city. Eventually, they form alliances with the rebels, who say that not all Flaxens are bad. The royal family had been ruling over the empire for thousands of years, conquering other worlds and dimensions and enslaving its people. Over the countless years spent in this dimension, Rudy and Amanda become very close and eventually confess their love for each other. After centuries of fighting against the royal family, the resistance wins the war, and all the slave races are allowed to return to their home dimension. Most choose not to, as they've been here for generations. Rudy grows to love Amanda even more, seeing how much she cares for all people, including their enemies. Once the war finishes, Robot is elected to be the new leader and rule over the Flaxen people, and he accepts. Rudy and Amanda become leaders and are beloved by all its people. When they finally have the opportunity to return back to Earth, they choose to stay and continue their work in this dimension. What follows is a period of peace and great prosperity, with great advancements in technology. It only takes the Flaxen people a few decades to rebuild after the war. After nearly 15 years, the royal family and their descendants are turned into slaves and are forced to work in the mines just to survive. Amanda asks Rudy to free them and let them live a normal life, but he opposes this idea. Eventually, she tries to help them inside the mines, and the royal family is grateful for her help, but this infuriates Rudy, who screams at her and tells her to get out of his sight. She spends the next decades alone and separated from Rudy, but eventually, she misses him too much, and the two of them reunite. But just like before, the two of them don't see eye to eye regarding the royal family, and Amanda joins forces with the resistance, who eventually overthrow Robot. The empire is back in the hands of the royal family, and Amanda becomes lovers with one of the female heirs to the throne. However, it doesn't take long for the Flaxen Empire to go back to their old habits and invade other dimensions and enslave its people. Monster Girl breaks into the prison and frees Robot, claiming he was right all along, and they have to stop the royal family again. They are able to quickly gain control over the empire and imprison the royal members once again, but Amanda can't help but feel guilty. While Robot was in prison, she had an affair with the female Flaxen. Robot feels hurt and betrayed, and he completely changes his view of her. He returns several days later and says he found a successor to replace him so they can finally return home to Earth. Even though they spend nearly 1,000 years in this dimension, they only look about 12 years older when they return home. Ever since they return, things just haven't been the same between Rudy and Amanda, and there is always this constant tension. However, everybody is shocked when the Flaxen Empire attacks London once again. Robot can't believe it, not after everything they went through. When they left, the Flaxen Empire was at peace, and the royal family had been erased. They shouldn't be back to invading other dimensions. That's when a powerful creature emerges from the portal, dressed like a regular Flaxen soldier, but resembling Monster Girl. This creature is incredibly strong, easily dealing with Robot's drones and even the Guardians of the Globe. Monster Girl is unconscious, but she recovers just in time to save Robot from being crushed to death. The creature decides to speak and reveals the truth. He is Monster Girl's son, the one that was created when Amanda procreated with the female member of the Flaxen Royal Guard. He was raised among the royal family and trained for one purpose: revenge. Monster Girl has no idea that she had a son. She is just as shocked as Robot is, but he doesn't care and attacks her viciously. Eventually, all of the heroes unite and slowly push back the Flaxen armies. while Monster Girl is able to take down her son, even though she has to knock him unconscious. A few days later, Amanda visits her son inside the Pentagon prison and says she cared about his mother, but they were never meant to be together, and that she never knew he even existed. Rudy takes all the blame for everything that happened and says he wasn't himself in the Flaxen dimension, and the two of them kiss. However, we see a flashback to when Robot was informed that Amanda had an affair and knew that she had a son. He didn't tell her anything, but instead asked his soldiers to hunt down every member of the royal family, including the women and children, and kill all of them. He wanted the entire royal bloodline erased from existence. Now that Invincible was infected with the Scourge virus and didn't have his powers anymore, Bulletproof has been filling in for him, working with Adam Eve and wearing the Invincible suit, dealing with villains all over the city. He returns home and spends an amazing afternoon with his girlfriend, but when he mentions Adam Eve, she immediately gets upset. Bulletproof cheated on her in the past, and she's worried he is doing it again with Adam Eve. The next day, Bulletproof returns home after dealing with yet another threat, but his girlfriend is furious with him for being late again. His parents are coming over for dinner, and she isn't a very good cook. He was supposed to do the cooking, but he forgot. He quickly cleans the room in just a few seconds, moments before his parents ring the doorbell, carefully covering a painting he's been working on of Adam Eve. Xandal isn't their only son. He has a twin brother named Tyrone, whom his parents always used to favor. While Xandal is an artist and passionate about drawing, his brother Tyrone is a scientist and always used to be smarter than him, making him the family favorite. Bulletproof has to leave and deal with yet another threat, lying to his parents and telling them he has to deal with something at the art gallery. He returns several hours later with a broken arm, talking about how he lied to his parents and how happy he is that they are gone, not having to explain a broken arm to them. But his parents were still in the apartment and heard everything. They confront Xandal, and he is forced to tell the truth. Ever since they were little kids, Tyrone was always the family favorite, being extremely smart and focused on school, while Xandal focused more on arts and later hooking up with girls. Tyrone quickly became the leading geneticist in his field, getting military contracts and doing really well for himself. However, he was fascinated with superheroes and villains, trying to determine the source of their powers and trying to recreate them. One night, he asked his brother over and drugged him. He found a way to get powers and wanted to use Xandal as a guinea pig. He strapped him to a machine and powered it on, but something went terribly wrong. While it succeeded in giving Xandal powers, Tyrone was killed in the process, and his remains were completely destroyed. Xandal couldn't bear to tell his parents the truth and pretended to be Tyrone, disguising himself as his brother to keep his parents happy. It took years before he learned how to use his powers and took on the name Bulletproof. He lied to his parents and told them that Tyrone was bulletproof, hiding the truth from them and keeping them happy all these years. When he finally told them the truth, his parents couldn't handle it. They completely lost it and called Xandal a liar. His mother threatened to call the police and have him arrested for killing Tyrone, but that's when his girlfriend lost it and hit her over the head with a frying pan. The blow was too powerful and it killed her, making Xandal's father lose control and attack her. He slammed her against the wall and punched her. Then he pinned her to the ground and tried to strangle her. That's when Xandal intervened and grabbed his father by the head, but he used too much force and snapped his neck, instantly killing his dad. Now with both his parents dead, Bulletproof put them inside the car and pushed it off a cliff, trying to make it look like an accident. He succeeded, and nobody suspected anything. The only two people who knew the truth were Xandal and his girlfriend. The story now jumps to Invincible and his girlfriend, Adam Eve, who flew him to a comic book convention since he didn't have powers anymore. Back on Talescria, Alan the alien returns and informs Omni-Man that he didn't release the virus on Earth and his son is okay, and then releases him from prison. Omni-Man visits his wife, and Oliver arrives to apologize for what he did to his brother, but his father doesn't hold it against him, saying he is proud he actually fights for his beliefs. Nolan and Debbie then prepare for a long trip back to Earth, saying they are going to spend most of the time inside their room, much to the horror of the crew on board. Back on Earth, Mark and Samantha are alone in their room and preparing for a wild night together, but Mark is hesitant because he still didn't have his powers. Luckily, it didn't take long for his powers to come back, and what better moment than pleasuring his girlfriend. The next day, Invincible meets with Bulletproof and says he can keep the old costume while he uses the blue suit. Since he didn't have his powers for many weeks, he visits Dinosaurus and wonders what he's been up to all this time. Dinosaurus was working on his next master plan, preparing a devastating attack on Los Angeles, similar to the one from Las Vegas. Invincible calls him crazy and informs Stedman of the situation. Every hero is dispatched to Los Angeles, and Mark finds several bombs hidden in the sewers. Dinosaurus wanted to create a powerful earthquake using the planet's tectonic plates. Robot says they were able to find most of the bombs, and the remaining ones won't be powerful enough to cause a massive earthquake. But sadly, this was merely a diversion. While the heroes were busy searching for the bombs, Dinosaurus detonated many bombs in the Arctic Pole, causing a big chunk of ice to break and start melting. This caused the ocean levels to rise to unprecedented levels, flooding most of the coastal cities around the world, including Los Angeles, New York City, Dubai, and even Sydney. The devastation was catastrophic. Millions of people lost their lives, and Invincible blames himself for breaking out Dinosaurus from prison. He thinks there is no other way, and says he needs to kill Dinosaurus before he does something even worse. But the fight is far from easy. Dinosaurus was not only a genius, but also very strong, with power levels similar to Invincible, if not stronger, and he managed to overpower him and grabbed him by the head. Dinosaurus squished Mark's head, killing him on the spot, and then ripped his body in half, while everyone else saw this on live TV. The Guardians of the Globe, Adam Eve, and even Thrag were all shocked to witness what just happened and couldn't believe it. But this wasn't the end. Dinosaurus found a weakness with the Viltrumites, saying that most of their powers comes from a complicated process that happens inside their ears. He found a special frequency that puts Viltrumites into a coma-like state the moment they hear it. He put Invincible into a coma and strapped him to a chair, and what everyone else saw getting killed on TV was nothing more than a clone of him. After the recent massive devastation, Dinosaurus realized he was wrong. Flooding all those cities and killing millions of people will be his final act, and he asks Invincible to kill him. After he killed Dinosaurus, Stedman visits Invincible and says that Robot built an artificial moon that will create a permanent low tide and help retreat back the waters. The death count will reach 1 million people soon. It could have been a lot worse. He offers Invincible an earpiece and asks him to work for him again, saying he worked with villains before. Meanwhile, Mark's parents return home and find their house in chaos, while Samantha was crying on the floor, believing that Mark was killed by Dinosaurus. Mark returns home unharmed, and Samantha asks him to prove it's really him, so he whispers something in her ear. They spend the night talking on the roof, and Mark says he started working for Cecil again, trying to erase some of the bad things that happened recently because of him. But Samantha interrupts him and says she's pregnant. Mark doesn't understand how this happened since they were careful every time, but Eve says it must have been the Viltrumite sperm. In the last remaining Viltrumite warship that was stationed on the moon, Thrag called all of his generals to complain that they weren't procreating with many women and creating babies like he told them to do. The generals defended themselves by saying they began having feelings for their mates, and most of them don't agree with them having multiple partners. While Anissa says she never wanted kids, and it's easier for male Viltrumites to have multiple babies. Mark and Samantha return to Los Angeles to help search for survivors and clean the city, but Robot attacks him, asking if he faked his own death and blaming him for everything that happened. Cecil arrives to calm the spirits and asks Mark to follow him and let the others calm down. A doctor visits Samantha later and checks on the baby, saying that every time she uses her powers, she's hurting the baby and needs to stop immediately. Meanwhile, on the former moon base of the Guardians of the Globe, Omni-Man spends time with his wife, while Thrag watched them from a distance. Thrag decides to attack Omni-Man and plunged himself at him, destroying the moon base and almost killing Debbie. Omni-Man is confused about the attack and says they had a truce, but Thrag explains why he broke it. After King Argol was murdered, Thrag was tasked with searching for his heirs and leading the Viltrumite Empire in the meantime. After many years, he ceased all attempts to find his heirs, but everything changed when he found out that Omni-Man was a direct descendant of the king. Thrag wants to kill Nolan and secure his position as leader of the Viltrumite Empire, but Nolan doesn't care about being king and just wants to live in peace. The fighting, however, continues, and Thrag goes all out trying to kill Nolan and hopefully secure his position as supreme leader. But before he could land the final blow, his generals stop him, giving Nolan a moment to recover. The other Viltrumites realize that Nolan is the heir of Argol and that Thrag tried to kill him, so they attack him. They sentence Thrag to death, but Nolan pleaded with them to let him live. The Viltrumites bow in front of Nolan and recognize him as the true heir of their late King Argol, and after a short ceremony, he was appointed as the new leader of the Viltrum race. Chapter 19 begins with Livy Angstrom going back to his normal life, believing that Invincible was now dead after Dinosaurus killed him. He reads the morning paper and is shocked to learn that Invincible is still alive and fighting bad guys. Robot was also watching the news, which was praising Invincible for stopping Dinosaurus, but he knows the real truth and blames Invincible for everything that happened. Mark asks Samantha to marry him, but since he didn't have a ring, she created one using her powers. However, she forgot that she wasn't supposed to use her powers anymore because it hurts the baby. The nurse warns them that if she uses her powers one more time, it might kill the baby. Since she doesn't have a choice, Samantha uses her car and one day returns home. But Angstrom was waiting inside and ambushes her, claiming he was expecting to catch Mark's mother and not her. Invincible returns home and is shocked to find Angstrom inside with Eve. But before he could do anything, the mad scientist teleports him away to an abandoned dimension. Mark was teleported to the same dimension that Angstrom used to discard his evil variants, and he finds one of them eating the corpse of another variant. This variant claims they were abandoned here with no food, and he was forced to kill the other Invincibles and eat them to survive. He wants to eat Mark too, claiming his meat is still fresh and tastes a lot better, but Mark defended himself. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Angstrom realizes that Samantha has powers and is pregnant, but she can't use them to save herself. They start talking, and he blames what happened to him on Invincible, but Eve claims he did it to himself. Probably because he was transferring the minds of all his other variants, his memories got twisted around, and he remembers things differently. Eve asks Angstrom if he ever stopped to consider what he could have accomplished if he used his powers and intellect towards a greater cause other than revenge. Meanwhile, Mark was fighting off the cannibal version of himself, but he wasn't alone. Another variant was also alive, and he came to help Mark. Together, they were able to take down the cannibal and kill him. Out of nowhere, another portal opened, and the two Invincibles used it to go back to Earth. Adam Eve asked Mark not to attack Angstrom, but the other variant didn't care. Angstrom claimed he had a plan to make the world a better place before the accident, and says he is sorry for spending all this time trying to kill Mark. He vows he is a changed man, and offers to send back the other variant into his own dimension. But just before leaving, the evil variant grabs Angstrom, and they disappear together. Mark wanted to follow him, but it was too late. They were both gone to God knows where. Back on the Viltrumite warship, Omni-Man, who was now the new leader of the Viltrum race, decides to release Thrag, and says he will work to change the Viltrum race, hopefully helping them to become a better people and forget about the old ways. He wants Thrag to live and witness all the great things his people will be able to achieve under his new leadership. Amanda and Rudy go on a date, but even though they had a lovely evening, something was bothering Rudy. He confesses that things haven't been the same ever since they came back from the Flaxen dimension. He ruled over an entire world, and the people worshipped him. He was somebody important, while on Earth he is nobody. Somewhere deep in space, Battle Beast was fighting a race of aliens that were enslaving its own people. He enjoys fighting and good competition, but these aliens were no match for him. One of the female aliens is highly impressed with Battle Beast and asks to leave the planet with him. Beast agrees to take her and tells the space racer that he is ready to go to Talescria and meet Alan the alien. Back on the moon station, Mark and Samantha have dinner with his parents, and Mark claims he can kick his father's butt now. Nolan asks him to prove it, and the father and son have a friendly arm wrestling competition. Even though Mark put up a good fight, his father won the arm wrestle and completely destroyed the table that his wife loved very much. Battle Beast finally arrives in Talescria and meets with Alan, who tells him he wants him to hunt down and kill Thrag. Back on Earth, another villain named Volcanica that lives deep underground gave Doc Seismic special powers, turning him into one of her creatures. Together, they launched an attack on the surface world, but the heroes gathered to confront the creatures. The fight quickly turned in their favor when Anissa joined the fight, taking out a giant monster all by herself. She then talked with Invincible and said she was watching him, and then out of nowhere, she kissed him. When Mark resisted, she said that she likes it better that way. Mark returns home pissed about the kiss from Anissa, but doesn't want to talk to Eve about it. After his evil variant grabbed Levi Angstrom and disappeared into another dimension, Mark asked Robot to find a way to go after them, but Eve doesn't approve of this, and they have a big fight over it. Eventually, Invincible and Robot travel to the other dimension, where the Viltrum Empire was successful at taking over Earth, and many Viltrumite warships were camped in space. Conquest greets them and asks them to follow him to the Pentagon because someone wants to see them. Invincible from this dimension was the leader of the Viltrum Empire, and he was happy to see Mark. He was keeping Angstrom inside the basement connected to a machine while trying to replicate his powers. His variant wants to travel to other dimensions and expand his empire by conquering even more worlds. After hearing about these plans, Robot used a sonic pulse to temporarily incapacitate the two Viltrumites, and then kills the evil variant by placing a bomb inside his mouth. He then uses his knife to decapitate Levi Angstrom and kill him once and for all. Robot was a changed man, ever since he was trapped inside the Flaxen world and ruled that world for nearly 1,000 years. He has big plans for Earth and doesn't want Invincible to get in the way, but instead of killing him, he chose to leave him trapped inside this dimension while he returns home alone. After being left stranded, Mark had only seconds to think of a plan. How would he explain the decapitated people and the dead Viltrumite leader on the floor? Chapter 20 continues the story right after Robot killed Livy Angstrom and left Invincible stranded in another dimension. When one of the Viltrumite agents entered the room, he quickly disguised himself as his variant and claimed he was Emperor Mark. Mark didn't know what to do next, until he remembered that this Earth is similar to the Earth in his own dimension. He goes searching for Robot and finds him inside his old lair, but this was before he transferred his consciousness inside the human clone. He tells Robot the full story of where he comes from, and Robot agrees to help Mark. He brings Robot back to the Pentagon to continue the work that was done on Levi Angstrom, in hopes of finding a way to go back to his own dimension. In exchange for his services, Mark offers to transfer his consciousness inside a clone of him, so after Mark was gone, he could pretend to be his evil variant and become the Viltrumite Emperor. In order to do this, Invincible brings the Mauler twin to help with the cloning process, since they are the world's experts on cloning. Eventually, the other Viltrumites grew suspicious, believing that Mark was being held hostage inside the Pentagon, and attempted a rescue mission. Robot was able to open a portal to Invincible's dimension, and he used it to go back home, while Robot transferred his consciousness inside the clone and pretended to be Emperor Mark. Mark returns home and finds Samantha living on the couch, but she wasn't happy to see him. She was very mad at him. Mark was trapped for 6 months inside the other dimension, and she blamed him for agreeing to even go there. She tells Mark she doesn't want to see him again and shouts at him to get out. Mark agrees to leave her alone and leaves the home, but someone unexpected was waiting for him. Anissa asks Mark what happened to him and where he was all this time. He ignores her, saying he doesn't have time to talk to her, but Anissa doesn't want to let him go and follows him. She attacks him and begs him to fight back. She likes it a lot when he fights back. She was able to overpower him and pin him to the ground, immediately getting on top of him so he doesn't escape. Anissa had a thing for Mark for some time now, and she wanted to mate with him, whether he wanted this or not. This is perfectly normal for a Viltrumite, choosing to mate with someone, even by force. At the end, she tells Mark to man up because it might take a few tries, claiming she will come back another time. After this traumatic event, Mark flew directly to the Pentagon to meet with Cecil Stedman and tell him what Robot did. As far as he saw, Robot showed no signs of turning evil. Robot appears and incapacitates Mark once again using the same sonic pulse he used before, and then attacks Cecil by slicing his throat. He then steps on his head, killing him on the spot. And even though Mark tried to help, all he could do is just kill one of his drones. Robot knows that Invincible is going to be his main problem and goes after Adam Eve next. Mark arrives home just in time to confront him, but the sonic pulse was just too much, and he couldn't focus on the fight. Robot grabs Eve by the leg as she tries to escape and then breaks her leg right off. Even though she wasn't allowed to use her powers because she might kill the baby, she was forced to do it and destroyed Robot's head. However, his body was still functioning, and he threw a bomb towards them that destroyed the entire house. Mark and Samantha survived the explosion and managed to escape by flying high into the air. Mark flew directly to the Viltrumite warship that was stationed on the moon and asked his father for help. Now that the cat was out of the bag, it was time for Robot to make his move. He wanted full control of the government agencies, but in order to do this, he needs to eliminate everyone that can and would oppose him. After Cecil Stedman, Shapesmith was the next to be eliminated, claiming he was sorry for doing this. Black Samson had no idea that Robot was coming to kill him when he greeted him over at the barbershop. The Guardians of the Globe were taken off guard and eliminated one by one. The Immortal and his wife Duplicate barely escaped the attack, and A.D. Sinclair was ordered to work for Robot and create more drones for his armies. Nobody would stand in his way, not even Monster Girl. Robot gives her one last kiss, and then orders his drones to take her body and throw her out the airlock, leaving her for dead in the cold embrace of space. However, Anissa saved her in the last moment, grabbing her hand and taking her inside the Viltrumite warship. Meanwhile, Adam Eve was forced to give birth, and the nurse brings the baby to meet his father. Mark was overwhelmed with emotions and asks about his girlfriend, but the nurse tells him she is going to be okay. He brings the baby girl to Samantha, who couldn't wait to hold her, but Mark was far from okay. He blames himself for everything. Omni-Man and the others confront Robot on the surface of the moon, and he tells them he doesn't want to fight. If they choose to oppose him, they would eventually win without a doubt, but not without massive casualties. The Viltrumites' ultimate goal is to create offspring and multiply their race. A war against him would greatly diminish their numbers, and he doesn't want to do this. As the leader of the Viltrum race, Nolan has to think about the survival of his people, and he agrees not to confront him and let him do his thing. Invincible greatly opposes the idea of doing nothing, and takes things into his own hands, but this time, with Adam Eve's approval. The Guardians of the Globe members that survived the initial attack organized a secret meeting to discuss their plan of attack, but Bulletproof betrayed them and sided with Robot, telling him the location of the meeting. The drones arrested all of them, ensuring that there was nobody left to challenge him. Mark flew down to Earth and tried to stop Robot, but the drones were just too many, and he couldn't fight off the sonic blast. Robot claims that in just 6 hours he was able to take full control over 100 law enforcement agencies worldwide, already preventing 9,000 deaths, and arresting Titan, killing Mantis, the Mauler twins, and other criminals. The world is already starting to change thanks to him. Mark gives up and returns to see Samantha, claiming that he was watching the news and everyone is claiming the world is changing for the better. Maybe the world is a lot safer with Robot in charge. After being tasked by Alan the alien with hunting down and killing Thrag, Battle Beast was waiting in his spaceship, waiting for information on his location. Space Racer informs him that Thrag was on the planet that they were orbiting, and he rushed immediately to hunt him down. He was hiding on the planet Thraxa, the same planet where Oliver was born. But Thrag wasn't afraid of Battle Beast, and claims that he defeated him before, quite easily if he recalls. Thrag admits that Battle Beast is incredibly powerful, and thinks he would make a great ally. But even though Beast craves battle above all else, he still has honor and vows to kill the exiled Viltrumite. However, before the fight could even begin, Beast's girlfriend released a horde of Ragnar creatures to attack and kill Thrag. He was furious that someone dared to interrupt his glorious battle and helped to kill the beasts. Thrag was severely injured in the fight and called Beast a fool for helping him. Beast was a formidable and honorable warrior and couldn't bear the thought of fighting an injured Thrag, so he took his giant blade and stabbed himself in the abdomen, trying to level the playing field. The two warriors jumped at each other's throats, knowing very well that when this is over, only one of them will be left standing. Battle Beast bit Thrag on the head and took out his eye, but Thrag said he fights for the survival of his race, and he won't lose this fight. He came to the planet Thraxa to mate with the females here, hoping that their rapid aging will help them grow a lot faster compared to normal humans, and he would be able to create an army of half-breed Viltrumites. Back on Earth, the surviving heroes attended the funerals of everyone that was killed by Robot when he took over the government, including Cecil Stedman, and Mark couldn't believe that Rex had the nerve to show up and sit next to Eve after he broke off her leg. Mark tried to convince his father, but Nolan refused to make a move against Robot. He talks to Samantha, and they both agree that they can't live here anymore if Robot will be running things from now on, so they decide to leave Earth and move to Telescria. After saying goodbye to their friends like William, Rick, and even the Immortal and his wife Duplicate, Mark takes his wife and their baby girl Terra on a long journey to their new home. They arrive on a strange new world much different than Earth, with flying spaceships everywhere, and robots patrolling the streets. They are greeted by Alan the alien, who wants to say hello to their daughter, but he got punched in the eye and started screaming in pain. Oliver also comes to say hello. He has grown quite a bit, and has a girlfriend named Haluma. She brought lots of food and offers to cook dinner, but Samantha doesn't like too much the alien food, even though Mark and his brother absolutely love it. The next day, Samantha tries to get close to Mark and get intimate with him, but he couldn't stand to be touched by her. Eventually, he comes clean and tells her what happened. He tells that Anissa forced herself on him, but he also blames himself for not resisting more. Maybe some part of him enjoyed it and wanted it to happen. Eve says it's not his fault, and he shouldn't blame himself, but he couldn't stand to be touched by her. Meanwhile, the battle between Battle Beast and Thrag continued, with no clear winner in sight. Space Racer was monitoring the fight from the planet's orbit and reporting everything back to Alan. By this time, the two have been fighting for days, and they still didn't show any signs of slowing down. Alan asks Mark to go to the planet Thraxa and kill Thrag, believing that Battle Beast was going to lose the fight. Sadly, he was right, and Battle Beast was killed by Thrag, who ripped out his organs as a sign of victory. But the fight left him severely injured, and he was taken to the infirmary by the Thraxan people. By the time Mark and his brother arrived, there was nobody left, and the planet was completely abandoned. Mark returns home and spends the next few days playing and taking care of his baby daughter, while also exploring the city together, trying out restaurants and new foods. Somewhere deep in space, Thrag's offspring were being born and growing at a rapid pace, while he eventually recovered from his injuries, claiming his health is improving. After capturing most of the heroes that posed a threat to Robot, the Immortal and Duplicate managed to escape, but Robot found them and managed to arrest the Immortal. Bulletproof was tasked with escorting him to his prison cell, unaware that the Immortal had ingested a powerful bomb that he detonates inside, destroying Robot's drones and severely injuring Bulletproof. Even though he lost his legs in the process, the Immortal was successful in his mission, and the Guardians of the Globe were now free. Monster Girl asks her son if he is going to help them escape, and he accepted. They were not alone, however. A.D. Sinclair decided to help them, and deployed his armies of Reaniman to keep Robot busy while the Guardians escaped. Robot offered to help Bulletproof and heal his body, but he refused and rather accepted to live with his scars, saying he deserves this. The heroes regrouped inside a secret hideout, but some of the members began having second thoughts. The first to express them was Britt, who says that Robot seems to be doing a great job and making the world a better place. That's when Robot decided to show up using the teleportation technology from Cecil Stedman. He thanks Britt for believing in him, and many heroes decided to leave the past behind and join him. Mark and his brother returned from the Thraxian planet empty-handed. Thrag was already gone by the time they arrived there, and the whole coalition of planets has been looking for him ever since. To keep himself busy, Mark agrees to work for Alan and helps Oliver search for a group of bad guys. These thugs were building an illegal Canslock farm, but they were no match for the two Viltrumite brothers. Meanwhile, Samantha has a harder time adjusting to her new life on Taliscria, dealing with new aliens and being overwhelmed by the whole situation. She tells Mark how she feels, and he offers to watch over Tara and let her have a free night. She immediately accepts the offer and leaves the house to enjoy some alone time inside the city. She visits museums, the park, food markets, clubs, and she even tries some new alien foods. The next day, Mark needed to abandon his family once again, because the space racer found out where Thrag was hiding, and Alan wants him and his brother to go there. They arrive on a strange planet, but the place looked abandoned. Mark goes alone to investigate a subterranean cave, believing that maybe Thrag and his forces were hiding underground, but he found something else. A bright light shined in front of him, and he couldn't see anything. All of a sudden, he wakes up on the toilet inside his home back on Earth. This bright light somehow teleported him into the past, when he was just a teenager still in high school. Mark has no clue how this happened, so he goes to high school to talk to Samantha, but she doesn't remember him since this was in the past. She was still together with Rex Splode, and this was the first time they ever spoke. She takes him to meet Teen Team, and he tells them everything. Robot believes him but can't explain how this happened. Mark then goes and speaks with his father, and says he knows everything about the Viltrumites and what he plans to do on Earth, but also that he won't allow it. Nolan reacted pretty much the same way he reacted the first time this happened, and threatened his son, saying he won't allow him to defy the Viltrum Empire. The two of them start fighting, but Invincible was a lot stronger now and holds his own against his dad, but they eventually crash inside the Guardians of the Globe base. Mark tells everyone to be careful around his dad because he wants to kill them, and all of them jump on him. Omni-Man was still incredibly powerful and fast, and he killed the Immortal by stabbing him through the abdomen. However, Martian Man was able to phase through his body, which made him sick, and War Woman knocked him out using her mace. Later, Nolan thanks his son for stopping him from killing the Guardians. All this time spent on Earth changed him, and if he'd gone through with his plan, he would have regretted it for the rest of his life. Mark then goes back to living his life just like he did in the past, by working for the government and helping the Guardians deal with villains all across the globe. But every night, he cried in his room because he missed his wife and daughter very much and couldn't return back to them. But one night, the powerful bright light he encountered in the cave long ago visited him once again. The entity claimed they lived outside of time and offered Mark another chance at saving all the people he could have saved in order to restore balance to the universe. Mark refused the offer, saying he wants his old life back. He wants to be again with his wife and daughter. The entity doesn't understand how Mark can trade so many lives for the sake of just one, but it's his decision, and the entity takes him back. Mark immediately flies back to Taliscria and hugs Samantha, who was shocked to see him return after all this time. Trapped inside that world in the past, only a few weeks had gone by, but here in the present, several years have gone by, and Tara had already grown up. Mark says he is sorry, and his daughter hugs him and says she still loves him. Samantha can't believe it was actually him. She thought he was gone forever after being gone for 5 years. They spend the night talking, and Mark tells her everything that happened and about the unknown entity that trapped him in the past. Alan the alien was happy to see Mark once again and says that Thrag is still out there, but Mark wants nothing to do with him and says he never wants to miss another moment of his daughter's life. They organize a welcoming party, and Oliver was all grown up now, and just as happy to see his brother was still alive. Mark and his family decide to leave for a few days and spend some time together on a secluded planet to try and make up for lost time. Alan recommended this planet a while back, but Eve didn't want to come here alone. She builds a home and plans to spend some quality time together here, away from everyone else. But when Mark tried to kiss Eve, she was hesitant, saying there was someone else in her life. It wasn't something serious. She was just lonely. Meanwhile, back on Telescria, Oliver sneaks in the middle of the night to talk to someone on the computer. He was secretly talking to Thrag and feeding him information about the status of the coalition of planets. While Mark was away, Thrag was able to restore the Viltrumite population, and he began his counterstrike by attacking one of the planets inside the coalition. His new Thraxian children have grown quite a bit and have become stronger, powerful enough to attack entire planets and conquer them in the name of their father. Back on the planet, Invincible and his family were having a good time enjoying each other's company when out of nowhere, Onan, one of Thrag's children, attacked Terra trying to hurt her. Mark reacted immediately and smacked Onan over the head while Eve took their daughter away. But Ursal, who was Onan's sister, was right behind her and broke off Eve's prosthetic leg, which prompted Terra to ask her mother if she is a robot. Eve throws Terra over to Mark and tells him to fly away and take her to safety while she stays behind to fight Ursal. Mark managed to gain some speed, but he couldn't go too fast because his daughter couldn't handle it, and eventually, Onan caught them from behind. He attacks Mark, prompting him to drop Terra and leaving her to freefall to her death. But just moments before she hit the ground, she started levitating, and she flew for the very first time. But her joy was short-lived because Thrag showed up and grabbed her by the leg, saying that her death is going to be more painful now. Out of nowhere, Oliver appears and jumps Thrag, prompting him to release Terra and run away. But attacking Thrag was a big mistake because Oliver was instantly killed by him and left for dead in a puddle of blood. Mark reunited with Eve and threatened to kill Onan if he didn't let his daughter go, but Thrag doesn't believe that Mark would kill him, saying that humanity is his greatest weakness. But he was wrong, and Mark strangles Onan to death and then throws his body towards Thrag, distracting him long enough for Eve to get to her. But unfortunately, Ursal returns and attacks Eve from behind, breaking her jaw, saying she deserves this for killing her brother. Thrag also overpowers Mark and literally breaks his body in two, spilling his guts and organs everywhere. Thrag then asks Ursal to leave them breathing long enough for their daughter to watch them die. Just minutes after they left, Eve was able to heal herself and Mark completely. Every time Eve's body is pushed to the extreme, her body overrides her limitations, and she can rebuild organic matter, allowing her to heal both of them and even her daughter's leg, which was broken during the fight. Sadly, Oliver was already dead, and there was nothing she could have done for him. For the first time in a long time, Eve and Mark both agree that if they want to have their lives back and live peacefully, they would have to kill Thrag. Chapter 24 begins on Telescria during the funeral of Invincible's brother after he was killed by Thrag. Nolan and his wife came to attend the funeral and were heartbroken that their second son was dead. Mark blames Alan the alien for sending Oliver undercover to work for Thrag and punches him in the face. The fight continues until Samantha interferes and screams at Mark to stop immediately. She blames him for being reckless and always doing stupid things without thinking of the consequences, just like on the planet where he was sent back in time. Eventually, everyone calms down and Alan returns to his girlfriend. Mark and Eve spend the rest of the day talking, but realize that they never actually got married. The two decide to get married and invite their friends, even though it wasn't the best moment after Oliver just died, but this might be their last chance before going to fight Thrag. Meanwhile, on another planet, Ursal was mourning the death of her brother Onan and tells her father he doesn't care about them. He only cares about the glory of the Viltrum Empire. Thrag dismisses this and says he cared very deeply about her brother, even though he never showed it, and hugs his daughter. Mark asks his father to gather the remaining Viltrumites and join them in their mission to take down Thrag once and for all. Nolan was hesitant at first, but eventually agrees to talk to them and ask them to help. Before leaving for this final and dangerous mission, Mark spends the day with his wife and daughter, visiting the city, eating delicious new foods, and playing together. The coalition of planets begins their assault on Thrag by freeing planets that were taken by him and his armies of half-breed Viltrumites. They manage to capture one of them alive and release him just so they could follow him back to Thrag and his forces. In another part of the galaxy, Ursal witnesses more signs of her father's aggression and disregard for her fellow brothers and sisters and begins to question her loyalty. The coalition finally finds Thrag and begins their assault, going all out against his forces, while he claims he wasn't expecting them so soon. Thrag orders his legion of half-breeds to attack the traitors and kill them in his honor. The half-breeds were not strong at all, but they were fast, and they were many. Mark and Eve were overwhelmed by their numbers and utter disregard for their own lives. The half-breeds were recklessly attacking and dying in the process, but it was as if they didn't care and just jumped to their deaths. Ursal begs her father to stop the attack and spare her brothers and sisters, but he grabs her by the throat and says it's not her place to question him. The first wave of attacks stopped, and the coalition regrouped inside the warship, claiming that they were heading towards Earth, where they prepared an ambush for Thrag. Nolan asks his fellow Viltrumites for help in taking down Thrag, and they vowed to protect Earth and the families they managed to build here. After being informed of the whole situation, Robot set a plan into motion that involved kidnapping every Viltrumite child on Earth and taking them to a secure location inside the Pentagon. He promised not to hurt them, saying that this is for their own good to ensure their safety. Out in space, Thrag launched his offensive, leading a pack of Ragnar creatures and his armies of half-breed Viltrumites. His former generals were now his enemies, and they attacked him, but he was able to use the Ragnars to kill a bunch of them. The coalition joins the battle, and Omni-Man says he's going after Thrag and jumps him head-on. Even though Nolan struck the first punch, Thrag recovers immediately and punches him right back, but Nolan was nowhere near as strong as the former Viltrumite leader and breaks both of his hands during the confrontation. Mark tries to help his dad and jumps on Thrag, but he just throws him away and lets his children deal with him. Thrag goes right back to attacking Nolan and stabs him through the abdomen using his right arm. Nolan survives this attack and says it's going to take a lot more than that to kill him, so Thrag uses his other hand to slice his body in half. Mark watches in horror as his father is being killed, but there is nothing he can do. He is literally surrounded by half-breeds. After seeing what happened to Omni-Man, Adam Eve sprung into action and left the spaceship to save him, even though she couldn't breathe in space. Mark was able to free himself from the half-breeds and attack Thrag at full force, but even he couldn't believe it when he saw that Robot came to help him using a very powerful robot. Adam Eve grabs Omni-Man and tries to take him to safety, but she was attacked by the Ragnar creatures. Anissa, out of all people, jumps to her rescue, pulling the beast away so she could escape, but she gets injured in the process. Eve grabs her also and flies towards the spaceship to save both of them. Ursal watched as all of this was going on and couldn't help but admire the loyalty and love the coalition members have for each other, something she never saw from her father. Meanwhile, Thrag calls his half-breeds and throws them at Mark, instantly killing them and trying to hurt him. Thrag didn't care at all for any of his children. He only cared about usefulness in battle. Mark says he won't allow him to kill any more of his children and grabs him, plunging together into the sun. When Ursal saw that Invincible was willing to sacrifice his own life to save her brothers and sisters, she called the attack off and asked her siblings to surrender. She claims that her father doesn't care about any of them and would rather give up than see all of her family get killed. But the fight continued inside the sun with Invincible and Thrag going all out on each other. Thrag says that even though Mark and his father were direct descendants of King Argyll, they were traitors who destroyed the Viltrum homeworld, and he will never allow them to lead the Empire. He calls Mark crazy for bringing them inside the sun to fight and wants to leave. But Mark grabs him from behind and says he is willing to give his life just to kill him here. Both of them fall inside a puddle of molten lava that instantly burns them alive, melting the skin off their bodies. But the fight continued. Even though they couldn't speak anymore, Mark continued to talk in his mind, saying that even though he didn't understand why his father let him live, he understands now what he did and why that makes him such a better leader than Thrag will ever be. Robot sends one of his armors inside the sun to cover Mark's body and protect him against the fire. Mark says that even his enemy tries to protect him, while Thrag has nobody. Nobody cares about him, and nobody will come to his aid in these moments. The fight continued until there was nothing left of the suit, and Mark got on top of Thrag and bit his throat, taking a big chunk of his melted flesh. This final blow was too much even for the mighty Viltrumite leader, and he was left to die. His body started to slowly fall towards the sun's core, melting away bit by bit until there was nothing left. Mark was now almost unconscious, but he wasn't alone. Alan the alien dove inside the sun and grabbed him, taking him away and saving his life. Alan brought him to the ship, and he was nearly dead, but the Argyll blood flowing through his body was strong, and it only took him just a few days to recover and even speak to his wife Samantha. Mark asks about his father, but Nolan wasn't feeling too good. Thrag damaged his heart in the attack, and his body was unable to heal anymore. Nolan says that Mark was born of two worlds, half human and half Viltrumite. and he wants him to lead the Viltrum Empire after he dies. Nolan believes in his son and can't think of a better person to replace him after he's gone. A few days later, Samantha wasn't too happy that Mark accepted being the new Viltrumite leader, saying that she and Tara need him more, but eventually she accepted the decision. However, there was still something left to do. Robot formed a blockade around the planet, using his army of drone robots, and forbade anyone from getting close. He says he took the Viltrumite kids from Earth hostage as a backup in case they try to turn his army against him. In order to keep their children safe, the Viltrumites turned on the coalition and attacked Alan the alien, which prompted Samantha to ask Ursal for help in taking down Robot. Robot never anticipated this kind of response to his actions when all the heroes, half-breeds, and even the coalition of planets united against him. The heroes fought their way inside the Pentagon, and even Ursal helped Mark fight his way through the army of drone robots. Eventually, Monster Girl spotted the real Robot hiding inside one of his drones, and Mark grabbed him and took him away. Robot tries to reason with Mark, saying the world is a better place now because of him, and the only reason he isn't dead already is because Mark knows this is true. Mark responds by saying he finally figured out a way to keep Robot, but prevent him from controlling the world. Once the fighting was finally over, he calls the Immortal inside the Pentagon and says that while he will be away leading the Viltrum Empire, he wants him to take over Robot's place, monitoring the governments of the world, advising and even dictating policies. He shows him what he did with Robot. A.D. Sinclair was able to harvest his brain and keep him trapped inside a special tank. That way, he is still able to use his intellect but can't do any more harm. All the Viltrumites were reunited with their children on Earth, but since Anissa was killed in battle, Mark was shocked to find that she had another kid named Marky, who was actually his son. It's already been 2 weeks, and Mark was attending the ceremony that appointed him as the new Viltrum Emperor, but Samantha urges him to speak with his new son, who until 2 weeks ago had no idea he even existed. The young kid just started developing powers and had no idea what was wrong with him. He escapes into the city and creates a lot of destruction until Mark was forced to stop him. Mark talks to him and asks him to stop, saying he is his father. Robot suggests the Viltrumites should leave the planet because many of the children will start to develop powers soon, and they will create havoc, possibly doing a lot of damage and also hurting someone. Mark agrees and says that by staying on Earth, the Viltrumites will mix with humans more and more, which could change the planet for the worst, getting rid of what makes it special in the first place. Everyone agreed that this was for the best, but Anissa's husband doesn't want to leave, saying he and his 2 children will stay behind. Before leaving, Mark has a father and son talk with Marky and tells him the history of the Viltrumite people, just like Nolan did with him a long time ago. In the end, he agrees that leaving 2 Viltrumites behind might not be such a bad idea, and his mother will want to be a part of Marky's life, watching over him and being his grandma. Many years later, Marky became a superhero himself, and he wore a suit similar to his father. His powers improved greatly, and he helped the Guardians of the Globe deal with a new generation of villains. Meanwhile, somewhere deep in space, Invincible's first daughter, Tara, grew into a lovely girl herself, following in her father's steps and using her powers for good, helping alien races all across the galaxy. After being gone from Earth for many years, Invincible became a respectable Viltrum leader, eliminating threats, shutting down hostile races, and bringing peace to quadrants of the galaxy that had been at war for eons. But this prompted many planets to leave the coalition of planets, and a small confrontation erupted between the 2 powers. Mark was victorious, and Alan agrees that maybe the galaxy doesn't need a coalition of planets after all. Again, many years later, Samantha was very old and about to die, and Mark called Tara to come and say goodbye to her mother. But moments before her death, Samantha was able to reconstruct her body and rebuild herself younger again. Every time she is on the brink of dying, she is able to rebuild organic matter and heal herself. Adam Eve was practically immortal. Eventually, Marky grew to hate his father for abandoning him on Earth all those years ago and attacks him. Mark says he is proud of the man his son has become. He did so much good on Earth and feels bad about abandoning him. He wants to be close to him now and says they have all the time in the world. The story ends with Mark and Samantha living a peaceful life on a planet surrounded by their family and friends, while remembering something his father asked a long time ago during their big fight. What will you have after 500 years?